Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, theories, and more.
I'm Lexi.
And I'm Nicole.
And today we are so excited to cover chapters 49 through 60 of A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. As always, let's kick it off with our content warnings. While we're focusing today's discussion on this stretch of chapters and ACOWAR, these episodes do include spoilers for the entire ACOTAR series. These deep dives do not, however, have spoilers for the rest of Sarah J. Maas's series, except at the end of every episode, where we include our Maasverse Madness segment. We'll give a big spoiler warning so you can leave the episode if you have not read the rest of the Maasverse, or you can keep listening for Throne of Glass and /Horror Crescent City callouts.
So with all of that said, if you don't know just how much Grayson sucks, then please go finish the books, rage, and then come back to the podcast. We will be here when you're done.
Next up, we at Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
We get another post-battle sex scene, and even though it's a fade to black, somehow we're still talking about it. So please be mindful of those little listening ears.
Additionally, we are so excited to see you at upcoming live events.
We cannot wait for our Fantasy Fangirls live show at Comedy Works South in Denver, Colorado on October 20th. VIP tickets are sold out because you all are freaking amazing, but you can still grab those general admission tickets.
We'll also be influencer partners at the Swords and Shadows Masquerade by Mountains of Magic in Highlands Ranch, Colorado on November 23rd.
You can also dance the night away with us at the Fantastique Collection's New Year's Eve drop party in Denver, Colorado. All the links to more information and to tickets to all the events are in the show notes.
And if you love Fantasy Fangirls and have been loving this ACOTAR series journey we're on together, if you want more content, more community, more events, and just more all around, please check out our Patreon.
We now have 3 membership tiers that you can join. Number 1, the Valkyries, which includes access to our Boppin' Discord, live Q&As from Lexi and I, community events, and a book club, promo codes for live events, plus a discounted 20% off and special merch store. That is all for $5 a month. Or you can join the High Fae, which includes everything from the Valkyrie level, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines, and special voting privileges. That's for $10 a month. And then, of course, we have our highly requested and newest tier, the Inner Circle, which includes everything from the previous 2 tiers, plus a lot more behind the scenes content, like a lot more actually, and we've been having so much fun with it. A welcome gift, giveaways, private Discord channel, your name shouted out on the podcast, and that is all for $25 a month.
Join the party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. The link is also in the show notes. And really and truly, friends, thank you so much for supporting us as we've turned this podcast into our livelihood. It's all because of you. One more important thing. We will not have an episode next Monday, September 2nd. This is the first week we've ever skipped since we started this podcast last year. But don't worry, episode 9 of ACOWAR will release on September 9th.
Thank you all very much for understanding, because I'm going on my honeymoon, and as much fun as it would be to bring my microphone, I don't want to do that. So thank you very much for understanding. And we cannot wait to give you all episode 9 on September 9th. It's nice and easy to remember. It's great. But now, friends, it is time to say goodbye to everyone's favorite search engine, the Suriel.
As always, Nicole's going to start this episode by summarizing what happens in ACOWAR chapters 49 through 60. I think this is our longest chapter stretch we have ever done. So gather around, friends. We need an Inner Circle Debrief.
We are never doing 11 chapters again, ever.
Especially on a week where we had 2 less days to...
Why do we always do this to ourselves? Chapter 49. Back in Valaris, in the dining room, our crew deals with the aftermath of the wall coming down. Namely, what the hell do we do now? But what if I told you I'm a mastermind? Elaine has an idea. We go to Grayson, my ex-fiance's estate, and ask them to take in the humans and protect them against Hybern's forces. This is the equivalent to stalking your ex on social media. What could go wrong? Nesta and Favor are like, give me your login info to Instagram so you don't have to see his ass. But no, Elaine will not share her password. So the plan is set. In 1 hour, they will go to Illyria and prep to winnow to the human lands. But Cassian is not going, and wanting to prep the girl he's been crushing on for some destruction, Cassian gives Nesta a crash course on how to make someone go ouchie. Chapter 50. With the Siri 1 hour countdown on, and Favor wanting to be as productive as possible, she makes a pit stop to the tiny ancient one's apartment, and the two of them go to the library to play Let's Make a Deal, this time with a scary shadow monster. But what does the monster want in part for aiding them in this war? a window. That's it. Much easier than a mirror that will make you go mad. The deal is sealed. First official monster locked in. Part 3. Hi, Lady, Chapter 51. Hours up, heading to the Illyrian camp. It's time for some quick intros. But oh my God, what is that? It's Nesta Archeron, or what they call her, a witch. The Archeron sisters and more head to the High Lord/Lady tent, and it's time for Elaine to put her anti-Fae filter on. More glamours Elaine so that she looks human again, and more Asriel, Rhys, and the three sisters all winnow to the gates of Grayson's estate. Chapter 52. Damn, this place is massive and slightly terrifying with ash trees galore. After waiting and Elaine sharing the How I Met the Lord's Son story, spoiler alert, it's way shorter than How I Met Your Mother, the knight in shining armor and his ass of a father approach. Elaine and Nesta step forward for the big ass to Lord Nolan, but it looks like that filter was not needed because Lord Nolan and Grayson already knew about the Archeron sisters run-in with the Cauldron, and how the younger sister of the two now has a fancy High Lord's son as a mate. Technically, he's not wrong, but how do you know this, Lord Nolan? I told them. It's I am the spy, Jurian. Chapter 53. Our whole crew goes rightfully on high alert, but there's nothing to fear because it turns out that Jurian has been on their side this whole time. Tell that to the time that you shot Asriel with an ash arrow, but whatever. But that's not the only whiplash we get this chapter, because as Jurian explains, Tamlin turned right around after the High Lords meeting and spilled the minute notes with the King of Hybern, who is planning to launch a battle on the Summer Court tomorrow. Dun dun dun, Chapter 54. All right, Jurian, you passed the "you're not actually a snake" test. Who doesn't pass that test though? Lord Nolan, who has no wish to let the riff-raff running amok in his lands, so only the rich and powerful will get his protection. Boo, you suck, Lord Nolan! Jurian having none of this though, and with a little I can tell the King of Hybern to avoid or attack this place incentive, Lord Nolan concedes. Fine, I'll be a decent dude. But Grayson not showing his decent dude flag and instead demands Elaine take off her engagement ring, and thus begins an awkward breakup. That is until Nesta comes up and slaps him in the face. Deserved! Chapter 55. Back at the Illyrian camp, our crew has their own Inner Circle debrief about Jurian and the next steps for the battle tomorrow. Later that night, Feyre, unable to sleep, finds Rhys, who is also not able to sleep, on a hilltop. It's not nightmares though, it's the guilt and fear of the coming battle tomorrow. Chapter 56. The next day, on a different hilltop, Feyre and more watch the ensuing battle, and it looks like Jurian's tip-off was the key to victory, because our crew absolutely decimates the Hybern forces, causing them to surrender. And thus for Tarquin, our golden retriever boy, to drown most of them on dry land. In the following hours, Feyre, Nesta, and more help where they can and are finally greeted by a thirsty Rhys and Cassian. But Nesta's spidey senses are tingling. Cassian is injured. After a passionate staring contest, the tension is deflated by an incoming Moor, causing Nesta to go back into her tent. Later, in Feyre and Rhys's tent, Rhys is unable to sleep. His adrenaline still too up from the battle. What else is up? His dick! Bang, bang, bangity bang. I said a 10 sex round 2, bang. In the aftermath of their lovemaking, Feyre shares with Rhys that she doesn't feel like she can be a part of the battles and work with the Legion. But Feyre's fears of being seen as a coward are immediately put to rest by her mate. Montage! After some resting and trench building, we learn that the Hybern forces have gone north. So Varian comes up with a plan. Make them believe that we're all still here, but then we'll go up north and get them. The plan is in motion, and just as our crew unveils themselves to the northern Hybern force, it is clear that we've been duped. Hybern was expecting them all along and prepared to be absolutely obliterated. Feyre, Nesta, and more all watch the battle fall apart, and Feyre knows that she has to do something. It looks like it's time for all reliable, the Google Suriel, Chapter 57. After quickly convincing more to be actually useful and go down to the battlefield, Feyre goes to Elaine and finds out where the Google is. Elaine must have typed the URL right in because she finds it right away. It is in the middle, right near the Weaver of the Wood. Feyre quickly winnows, and not even needing to set up a trap, she hears the raspy voice of the Google Suriel. Are you feeling lucky, Feyre Archeron? Chapter 58. Wasting no time at all, the Suriel starts spitting out the facts. Well, not where Hybern's army is. That gets a 404 error. We do learn that the Archeron sisters can track the Cauldron and therefore Hybern. Plus, the answer to all your Hybern problems lies on the second and penultimate pages of the Book of Breathings. But what's that? An ash arrow shoots through its neck, and Ianthe steps into the clearing. Chapter 59. Just when you think you can't hate Ianthe anymore, she proves us wrong. She gave the Google Suriel a tracking cloak. Reject all cookies next time, please! And she was easily able to find Feyre. Feyre, getting a wild and crazy idea, runs through the woods and right into the Weaver's cottage. Chapter 60. Your DoorDash is here, Straga. Feyre lures Ianthe and her two guards into the darkened room and slams the door shut, locking the Suriel killers inside. The screams of Ianthe dying fill the woods. You will not be missed, you monster. But one monster will be missed. The Suriel laying dying in the clearing and refusing Feyre's healing magic. It is already too far gone. It does have one request for its unexpected friend, though. Leave the world a better place than you found it. And the final breath leaves the Suriel, and Feyre realizes that it too was a dreamer. Stab, twist, ow. Feyre is not alone, though. Helion comes up to her, and Feyre drapes his cloak over the dead Google. It looks like we'll need to use Bing.com next time.
By the way, everybody, can we give Nicole a round of applause for that one? Wow. 11 chapters. My goodness.
That hurt my heart yesterday, but I'm so glad it's done. Thank you very much.
Summer is winding down, and you know what that means? Soft sweaters and comfy leggings season? Yes! I love fall clothes more than pumpkin spice lattes, but shifting our wardrobe from summer to fall can feel overwhelming and stressful. Luckily, Quince offers timeless and high-quality items that I love just as much as this season, because Quince ensures that my wardrobe stays fresh and I don't blow my budget.
Like cashmere sweaters from $50, pants for every occasion, washable silk tops, and so much more. I know you're talking about fall clothes, Lex. I have my own pair of Quince shorts that I'm about to pack for my 10-day Europe trip. And you know what? It is the first item that was on my packing list. It's those black shorts. They're my favorite things ever because they're comfy. They look great on me. I will toot my own horn there. And they're also super high quality without the high quality price tag.
Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. Huzzah! And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I just love that so much.
Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials. Go to quince.com/FFG for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That is QUINCE.com/FFG to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/FFG.
It's time to step into the cauldron and discuss key insights, character analysis, lore, foreshadowing, theories, and oh, so much more. The wall is down, and it's a good thing these High Lords are already together because they need to figure out a response plan right now. Within minutes, they all figure out next steps before departing the Dawn Court. Thesan promises large shipments of Fae-bane antidote to every High Lord and army within 2 days. His Peregrine Legion will begin readying themselves to join the Illyrians in the skies. Kallias and Helion will have their terrestrial armies marching south as soon as possible. Tarquin's armada will be left to guard the Summer Court cities, while the bulk of his soldiers will march on land. Tamlin is the only one who does not have armies to pledge, since it's in shambles after Feyre imploded the Spring Court. This is bad, since it's his court that bordered the wall, and an army would kind of be nice to shield the now unprotected humans. The others tell Tamlin that his goal right now is to get his people evacuated to the Summer Court and to rally whatever host he can muster. He doesn't even reply, doesn't confirm that he'll bring forces or anything.
I do have a question because he doesn't even reply. It's sus to me. Like, if I was one of the High Lords and I was like, okay, Tamlin, like, we'll see you here. Like, we'll blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, bye. Like, and doesn't say anything. I'd be like, I'd like a verbal confirmation. Like, do you think he's in shock? Do you think he's worried about his own court and he's absolutely shutting down? Do you think he's calculating?
I do think that there's an embarrassment here and just very much a frustration because everybody else is talking about their armies and whatnot, and he literally cannot contribute. And so why should he even respond because he doesn't have anything else to contribute to this conversation?
All right, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. We will learn soon from Jurian that Tamlin goes back to Hybern immediately after this meeting, but even later on, we'll learn that he's playing double spy against Hybern. So Hybern thinks he's a spy against these courts, and I'm willing to bet he shares just enough information from this meeting to make the king happy, but he's also keeping his own real intentions of helping Prythian secret. He's very Severus Snape here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And lastly, no word whatsoever from Baron that he's made up his mind to fight with them, but who's surprised by that? With plans in place and goodbyes exchanged, the Inner Circle arrives back in Velaris to jump into action.
Naturally, our crew is going down quite a bit of a what if rabbit hole, including, and I'll even say especially, Fae-vorite, who is specifically beating herself up for not pushing Nesta more to train, wishing that she had insisted that they go directly to the wall to see what they could do to prevent this exact situation. This kind of, oh my God, I should have done X amongst our characters, it is such a relatable reaction to everything that's happening right now. And Fae-vorite, like her mate, is the kind of person who places the burden on her own gosh darn shoulders. Quote, perhaps it was my fault for wanting to shelter her, for letting her remain withdrawn. It is obviously not her fault. And honestly, let's take a moment to look at what would have happened if she had pushed her. Nesta was dealing with her own trauma associated with the new life that she now has and the Cauldron's role in it. This would not have gone very well if she had pushed Nesta. Nesta needed to come to this conclusion on her own to help, like from a place of, I want to choose to be brave rather than I feel like I'm being called out for being a coward. And she would have kicked and screamed and fought Fae-vorite every step of the way if Fae-vorite had, quote unquote, forced her hand.
Fae-vorite thinks to herself that she couldn't, quote, decide whether the potential of breaking my sister permanently was worth the cost of saving lives. I know that she's High Lady. However, like you're saying, this had to be Nesta's choice about how far she's willing to push herself. Ultimately, it's not Fae-vorite's call.
No. But the stakes are so high that it makes sense that Fae-vorite is beating herself up and thinking like, what else could I have done? I could have done this. I should have done that, yada, yada.
Absolutely. Especially because, once again, Hybern is several steps ahead of them. They are just constantly in reactive mode as much as they're trying their best to get ahead and be proactive.
Well, and let's also be clear. These are people who are very much used to being 2 steps ahead of everyone else. So exactly. Being behind is a little bit like oh, this doesn't feel very good. I don't like this. Now, Fae-vorite is not alone in shouldering this guilt and burden. Nesta also blames herself, wondering if she had stayed home from the meeting and practiced, if anything would have been different. This immediately makes my mind go back to the Nefel philosophy. Training and practicing till the last second that you possibly can, because you never know when that hour, minute, millisecond will make or break a difference. However, with the information that they had at the time, Nesta going to the meeting to sway the High Lords to their side was absolutely more important and a much better use of Nesta's time and energy. Nesta will then turn to her youngest sister and ask, what do I do now? Fae-vorite and Nesta are so much more similar than I think we give them credit for. They both need a goal. They need a purpose to feel like they are moving forward and making a difference. And that's why going to Silver Flames for like 2 seconds, I think it's so smart of them to give Nesta a goal to train, to, go to the library. I do have some qualms with how they presented that goal to her, but we're going to save that for our Silver Flames coverage.
In answer, Fae-vorite will tell Nesta that she travels with them because they'll need her close to warn them if the Cauldron is used again. And first stop now with the wall down is heading to the Illyrian war camps. Rhys needs to make a few things clear to the Illyrian warriors and, as Cassian says, give one of his pretty speeches before they go off to war. But that's not the only thing on their agenda, because with the wall gone, the Inner Circle and especially Nesta are concerned about the immediate danger that the humans are in, specifically their estate's servants. Nesta says that they won't be willing to come to Valaris. Rhys offers to get them on a ship south, but Nesta's like, well, their families and friends need to come too. I'll be honest, I'm a little confused by this exchange because they partly seem to be talking about all the humans in the territory and partly about just the Archeron estate workers. But no matter, because Elaine has the winning idea.
At this table, we can immediately notice that something has deeply shifted within Elaine. She's sitting more straight back and clear-eyed than Fae-vorite has seen her in a long time, if perhaps ever. The tides have turned in this war, and everyone is needing to step up and put their own confidence/leadership hat on. And what's amazing and awesome is that Elaine is no exception. We've discussed in ACOWAR how Elaine is someone who, when given the opportunity, does step up quite majorly. It's almost like her instinctual reaction, or I'll even say the person that she wants to be, is someone who jumps into action and helps. So she speaks up, quote, "We can move them to Grayson's estate." Our crew all faces Elaine at this declaration, and specifically the evenness in her tone of voice. Evenness being associated with someone who takes charge, who has confidence in the situation. Not something we typically associate with Elaine, who has in our story been a little bit more of a passive participant. Elaine is someone who has never gotten the chance to be an active participant, though. I'm not saying this is her fault. She's always been coddled, and this is her way and her opportunity to help the cause, but in her own manner, I'll call it. Now, there are several reasons why Elaine does suggest going to Grayson's place. I'm going to start with the more, I'm going to call it practical reason, because the state is easily accessible. It's right there next to the human lands. It's got high walls of thick stone. Inside, there are soldiers to defend against the army. There's supplies to keep everyone safe and fed. There's hundreds of hounds bred to hunt Fae. That's terrifying. And if you're thinking this is rather, convenient, that's because Lord Nolan, aka Grayson's father, has been planning for this for a long time. His preparations for Fae attacks also includes a grove of ash trees, which have become a cache of weapons, convenient for yet another human versus high Fae war. And should they need to escape, the estate additionally has tunnels that will also help them get away. Oh, but that's just the practical reason, because there is another major reason that Elaine suggests Grayson's estate.
So someone in our crew has to convince Grayson to let the humans evacuate to his estate. And the Night Court knows that they will really need more than the protection Grayson and his father can currently provide, like wards around their estate at the very minimum. So who can speak to Grayson about these delicate matters? Elaine!
Oh, it's no secret that Elaine has had a difficult time adjusting to this world and literally her world being turned upside down. She has had to mourn the life she was going to have as Grayson's wife. Their wedding was coming up. She also loved being a human. She was happy in society, planning balls and being a socialite. No one can blame Elaine for struggling into the unknown that she was thrust into. In Elaine's mind, if she goes to Grayson's and shows him that she wants to save the humans, it's something that she does genuinely want to do, this isn't for show, then maybe, just maybe, he'll be like, oh, you're the same woman you were before. And as he says later when they're departing, quote, did you think you could come back here, live with me as this lie? And she says, no, yes, I don't know what I wanted. Elaine, my heart just breaks for you. And Elaine is hoping that perhaps he'll still want to marry her and he will still be in love with her despite her now being Fae, or if she's able to keep her ruse up, or even as Feyre thinks later, that their love would overpower even her mating bond with Lucien.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'll argue that it's not necessarily despite being Fae, because she'll try to convince Grayson that she isn't Fae. True. So this is her chance to show him that she is still the same woman, human and all, even if her sisters are now Fae, and that Elaine and Grayson can still get their happily ever after.
Feyre wonders later, quote, if Elaine had somehow suggested this visit right after Lucien had left Prythian for some chance to ... I didn't let myself finish the thought. I'll finish the thought for you, Feyre. For some chance to be with Grayson again. And it's like, that's so sad. Like right after Lucien's gone, she's like, let me try this with my ex-fiance. This is Elaine's last ditch effort to cling on to any reminiscent of her life that was ripped away from her drastically. And even as she's saying all this, she's like brushing her finger over her iron engagement ring. Like she is still desperately holding on to any kind of chances she could have with him. Oh, there's only one little problem, Elaine. In case we didn't mention, you're super Fae now. And as she's just explained, this fortress is designed to keep her out and literally kill her. In fact, Nesta has to even remind Elaine that she is Fae in this scene. It's almost like this spark of hope brought up in Elaine's mind, like drowned out the idea that she was Fae. And it's like all her ideas were like, oh my gosh, I can be with Grayson again. So like there was that I'm still human. But Elaine does have an idea. Glamour her so that she looks human. I just, my heart so swells for Elaine right now. It's almost like she got so excited to look in the mirror again and see herself as human staring back. Like later when Moore does glamour Elaine, Moore tells her to act human. And Elaine says, it's the same way I act now. I think she fully believes this answer. She has done whatever possible to hold on to that human identity even in her grief. It's almost like the seer/Fae side of her is like being shoved down over and over again and finally just like boils over, which is why she can't really control it when it does happen. To which Feyre thinks next, quote, try to keep the vision talk to yourself.
As Elaine offers to help, her two sisters have something to say about it. No! Like always, they are determined to protect Elaine. She is the sweetest of them, the delicate flower that needs coddling. Nesta has been especially protective of Elaine since they were children. Even when the debt collectors came to their house all those years ago and beat their father, Nesta only cared about shielding Elaine. This protection has only amplified since becoming Fae, as Nesta has personally cared for Elaine and lived in fear of her dying. Feyre, similarly, has refused to bring Elaine into the mix. She's she's too fragile to even consider involving her in the war efforts. So for Elaine to step up and say she wants to help, and here's her idea to do so, it catches her sisters off guard and makes them instantly want to guard her from danger, from getting her heart broken all over again. But just like how Feyre needs to allow Nesta to make her own choices, both of them need to respect Elaine's courage and request to help too. Elaine is her own person, as she will remind her sisters on multiple occasions, and has the same right to making her own choices and doing her part to save humanity, which she does show here by cutting her sisters off and reminding them that it's already ended badly. Quote, now it's just a matter of deciding how we meet the consequences. I love how it's Moore who sticks up for her and her choices, because Moore has been treated like that delicate flower from her own trauma, and she's the first to recognize Elaine's choice and respect it.
There's also this moment where both sisters are like, no, let me talk to Grayson instead. Let me. And I understand that they want to protect the sister they love deeply. They also really got to learn to trust Elaine's ability to stand on her own 2 feet. Like, I am not a parent. I am not. So big disclaimer here, take this with a grain of salt. But I almost imagine this as like seeing your child make a decision, and maybe you don't agree with said decision, but you let them make it so that they can either learn a lesson or stretch their capability and confidence. Nesta and Feyre really need to let Elaine stretch her own wings and learn how to fly. And Elaine is literally having to say, like, shut the fuck up. I need to learn how to do this. Like, I'm really proud of Elaine for doing that. That's impressive.
Me too. And it's like, even if her choice is for, I'll say, very hopeful and reasons that we all know are not going to work out, it's still like she needs that closure for herself. Like, if she is willing to put her heart out there, and they need to let that happen so that she can get that closure, as terrible as that is. Feyre can't budge on one thing, though. She cannot promise Elaine, like her sister begs, that she will not kill Grayson if things go badly. She compromises that she will do everything in her power to avoid it. But the truth is, if Grayson tries to kill any of them, Feyre can't risk one of her own for a Lord's son that is out for blood against these Fae. Fair. I'd do the same thing and make it clear that my goal is defending my own, which does include Elaine. Because yeah, if Grayson realizes his fiancé is Fae, he might very well try to hurt her. And Feyre will not spare her feelings and give that even a sliver of a chance. After Elaine leaves, Cassian turns his attention towards Nesta and tells her if any of those human pricks try to hurt her, she kills them. Phew! Good thing he said this after Elaine left. Cassian won't be present at their trip to Grayson's estate because he needs to focus on mustering the full might of the Illyrian legions. In other words, he won't be there to protect Nesta against this very real danger they'll be walking into with ash arrows, Fae hunting hounds, and humans who really hate them. Remember, even just a scratch of ash can make Fae queasy enough to be vulnerable. So he gives her a quick training lesson. Mark the exits of every area she enters and count how many men are around her. Always know where Rhys and the others are. He reminds Nesta that she's stronger and faster now as a Fae. He even shows her what to do if someone gets her in a hold and where to aim for the soft parts. Quote, when he finished, he stepped back, his hazel eyes churning with some emotion I couldn't place. Cassian wants to help Nesta so badly. He sees her potential, her drive, her inner strength, courage, and determination. He recognizes the warrior that she can be and the benefits mentally and physically to arming herself with the skills to defend herself and take down her enemies. But she's refused to show up to training. So this mini lesson is the best he can do right now. And yes, she allows it because she's warming up to him and realizes that war and dangers are upon them. Once Cassian leaves, she has such a sister moment with her busybodyer. Don't even start. Because yeah, what's happening between her and Cassian is like on full display for everyone here.
To be fair, like, back when you were single, if you had a moment like that with someone, I would have given you those eyes.
Oh, absolutely. Such a sister move. Yeah, it's like, don't even start with me right now. I don't want to talk about it.
With 1 hour before their departure to the Illyrian war camp, Feyre wants to make the absolute most of it. So she pit stops at Amren's, who is growing more and more annoyed at the stupid book. And Amren and Feyre go to the dark depths of the library. Why, do you ask? Feyre is replaying the High Lords meeting and how they don't have the promise of Baron's assistance, how the other High Lords have so little in comparison to Hybern's forces. She is realizing really and truly just how outmatched they are. I'm not even going to say realizing. She's getting a reminder because she's already realized this. And how Hybern is always 2 steps ahead of them, like when he took the wall down. And honestly, she's fucking over it. Not wanting to count on the other High Lords equaling victory, and not only because she doesn't have a whole lot of faith in their forces, but also she just doesn't really trust them. She knows that Rhys will give his own life at the end of this war if needed, and she refuses to risk her mate's life if she has anything to say about it. So, field trip to the library with Amren.
Apparently never minding the fact that the priestesses must grant you access to the library, or maybe it doesn't apply to Feyre because Rhys said this sanctuary also belongs to her because of her own past trauma. Anyway, Feyre summons Bryaxis at the bottom of the black pit in the library. She's here to offer the monster the same deal that she gave to the bone carver because Bryaxis was locked down here a long time ago. But Amren can confirm that she has the ability to break the wards and set Bryaxis free.
Feyre mentions that, quote, someone locked it down in the library a long time ago. Do we ever find out who that someone is?
No, I don't think so. Like, we could wonder if it was the ancient High Lord who started Valaris, but yeah, we never do know.
Interesting.
So Amren will set Bryaxis free if Bryaxis will fight for the Night Court against Hybern. But like the Bone Carver, Bryaxis has come to love the home it's trapped in. But hey, it would love to see sunlight and moonlight and the stars, which a simple window would make possible.
I love that Feyre's like, that's it? Even Rhys later is like, you did tell it you need it to, slay our enemies, right? It's so sad. It just shows how starved this monster is for any kind of life. It kind of breaks my heart for this terrifying shadow creature.
So the bargain is made, where Feyre now rocks a second band tattoo on her arm beside her first one with Bryaxis. Amren will disable the wards when Bryaxis is needed, and Bryaxis will be able to hunt down Hybern without restraint, but only until the war is over and, I quote, until we no longer need you. And in return, Feyre will have a window in the library installed for Bryaxis to see the sky. Several things to note here. For one, Bryaxis will not return to the library after the Hybern War, and no one will know where this monster is. Which makes me wonder, does that mean Bryaxis breaks the bargain and has to deal with the repercussions? Or, and this is my theory, could it be interpreted that they will still need Bryaxis because the war is technically not over, and therefore Bryaxis is within its right to not have to go back yet? This could be a big teaser for what's to come in ACOWAR 6.
Well, and I wonder if, going back to how Azriel might be able to have some kind of connection with Bryaxis, shadow power, and maybe Azriel's book is leaning towards into that, like, Bryaxis plotline with Kostjay.
Maybe, yeah, because it says, until we no longer need you, and they could still very much need Bryaxis, and that is why the bargain was not broken. One other tiny little thing here, Nesta will also have her own interactions with the Heart of Darkness at the pit of the library, and I'm so excited to explore that. That is separate from Bryaxis because Bryaxis will not be there, but maybe with the House of Wind coming to life for Nesta, there's something there about why Bryaxis doesn't return. I don't know. We'll talk about that later. It's interesting how Feyre doesn't tell the others about her bargain with Bryaxis. She does only tell Rhys, who jokes that poor Cassian will never recover when he sees his newest recruit. Why do we think she doesn't disclose this information to the rest of the Inner Circle when it's a pretty damn good win for their side? I personally think there's two reasons. Number one, by recruiting Bryaxis, she is basically giving up on the deal with the Bone Carver, technically because she's too afraid to look in the Ourobor's mirror, even though her family is in the same boat and everyone knows they're all too vital to risk losing oneself to the mirror, but she may be self-conscious that she's unwilling to try and seal the bargain with the Bone Carver. And number two, bargaining with a monster that is the most terrifying thing ever is kind of crazy. And she's still new at being High Lady and making these big decisions. Maybe she doesn't want to be judged by the Inner Circle for doing something so crazy, and she doesn't want them to question her judgment when she knows in her gut that this needed to happen.
Honestly, I also would make a bargain with a ancient monster if it meant that I would sleep through the night without waking up too hot. If you wake up too hot or even too cold, it is time to introduce you to Miracle-Made bed sheets. Miracle-Made sheets are inspired by NASA and use silver-infused fabrics that are temperature regulating so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long.
These sheets are infused with silver that prevents up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Plus, bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. But you can sleep clean with Miracle. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels.
Go to trymiracle.com/FF to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can get over 40% off. And if you use our promo code FF at checkout, you will get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product that it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you will get a full refund.
Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/FF and use the code FF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/FF to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode.
As we enter part 3 of this book, which, wow, I feel like ACOWAR is flying. Like, we realize we have 3 episodes after this one. That is crazy. It is time to look at the symbolism behind the meaning of this last title, part 3, High Lady. Part 1 was the Princess of Carrion to represent Feyre's revenge era. Part 2 was the Curse Breaker to symbolize her growing into her role as High Lady and fully embracing her role as Curse Breaker from Under the Mountain. But here we are in part 3, and this is Feyre fully stepping into that High Lady mindset. It is no accident that part 3's pivot is right after Feyre went and made a full-on deal with Bryaxis, something she orchestrated all on her own without consulting Rhys first. This is also right after the High Lords meeting, where she is now officially open and out there as High Lady. It's no longer a secret. This part 3 is also about making very difficult leadership decisions, but it's decisions that Feyre herself makes. While she does consult Rhys on army movements sometimes, when it comes to monsters, Feyre's all on her own. From Bryaxis to the Suriel to the mirror that leads to the Bone Carver. Yes, I know that Rhys does Striga. She's 3 for 1 on him. I'm sorry. Part of Feyre's journey in this series was her overcoming the loss of control and the abuse she had from Tamlin. And that includes her feeling like she was not able to make her own decisions and have any autonomy over her life. Part of Rhys being the most amazing book boyfriend ever is him showing her that she does have the choice to make in her own life. There's that theme of choice we've talked about ad nauseum. Now, Feyre is fully embracing that mindset, both Feyre the person, but also Feyre the Curse Breaker, and now Feyre the High Lady. Also, this is right after the scene of them all saying goodbye to Velaris and the townhouse, wondering if they'll ever see it again. Now, this is obviously something they will see again, but that scene is really about saying goodbye to peace and life as they know it, and it's saying hello to new responsibilities and challenges.
We're back at an Illyrian war camp, and even though it's summer, it's still chilly here because you see, heat makes people's tempers rise. And I love how, since the Illyrians are already known to have tempers, their territory is in the mountains. It's fitting that their people thrive in the cooler climates. Anyway, with the Illyrians gathered here to prepare their forces, we've got quite the welcome party, and it includes Lord Devlin, who might be sneering, but that's considered mild compared to some of the others here to greet them. And they only have eyes for Rhys, completely dismissing Cassian and Azriel with their 7 siphons apiece. It's wild to me how much contempt they have for Cassian in particular, who is the general of their armies and has proven himself time and time again. But Illyrians really take being pureblood as seriously as Voldemort, and because Cassian and Azriel are bastards, they always look down on them. Well, that tune might change after Cassian dominates on the battlefield, but we'll get to that shortly. Feyre marvels at the sheer size of the host assembled in the camp around them, and she and Nesta are half hiding Elaine because, of course, they are. In fact, all of the females in our group have taken a literal step back because now is not the time to piss the Illyrians off about women in charge when they have shit to do with war. Nope, that will have to wait until Silver Flames.
Time for a wing watch. Rhys is notably not wearing his wings as they come into the Illyrian camp. Not because he's, wanting to not wear his Illyrian mask per se. It's more because they know he is an Illyrian. He trained with them. He proved his place in the Blood Rite. He's good. It is now time for them to remember that he is not just one of them. He is their High Lord. This is a boss-ass wing watch, which honestly, I'm kind of here for it.
When he brushes off how big of a deal it is that the wall fell by calling it a temporary failure, that is certainly donning his High Lord mask. I love how there's that difference with what kind of mask he wears with depending on who. He has to be strong and show not an ounce of vulnerability to these Illyrians. The wall falling down is way more than a temporary failure, as our characters have had to process and talk about. But of course, he's not going to hint at that when he needs these Illyrians to be confident and strong in their mission against Hybern.
Lord Devlin turns to a new face, though. Nesta, quote, "What is that?" "Well, hello to you too, Sir Lord Devlin." Cassian tells him that is none of your concern, which is a nice callback to when Devlin met Feyre for the first time, noting that she is other and compared Feyre to Amren, which, wow. In that exchange, Rhys told Devlin that she's his and no one touches her. Not unlike how Cassian is coming to Nesta's defense now. Maybe it's not as stark, but that mating bond is definitely being hinted at. But Devlin is not quite as satisfied in Cassian's answer. He says, quote, "Is she a witch?" And ironically, Nesta shoots back, "Yes." Let's talk about this. Not only is this so funny because Nesta is so over everyone's bullshit, but she's also relishing in the fact that full-grown Illyrian warlords are like shying away from her. They're fearful of her. Now, there are some theories around Nesta being turned witch or having witch-like powers from the Cauldron, so they might not be entirely off here. There are also some theories that Mama Archeron was a witch, specifically a seer witch, which A, is why all three Archeron sisters are super duper powerful, which we'll learn from more later what witch powers are. And B, it's why Mama Archeron told Feyre, the youngest daughter, who she basically ignored her entire life, to take care of the entire family, because she, a seer witch, foresaw the series events and everything that would lead them to Prythian. However, all of these theories, specifically around Nesta being a certain type of witch, I'm going to have to hold off until some Maasverse Madness sections of Silver Flames. Not wanting to scare the Illyrian babies any longer, Feyre takes Nesta and Elaine to the High Lord / Lady tent, which Nesta immediately turns to Moore and asks, what's the difference between fairies and witches? Moore explains that witches, quote, amass power beyond their natural reserve. They use spells and other archaic tools to harness more power than the Cauldron allotted. And some of them use it for good and some of them use it for evil. Moore, you seem to know a whole darn lot about witches. More on this in Maasverse Madness today.
I'm sorry. Every single time I hear about like, oh, is she a witch? Like all I think about is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Witch, she's a witch.
Yes.
So this does indeed confirm that there are witches in this world. They tend to be banished to the Bog of Urid in the middle. I did a search for the word witch in the whole series, and almost every reference is about Nesta. She really embraces it, even telling Lanthus that she is a witch from Urid's dark heart. I love how she embraces being a witch, and I'm not surprised because the explanation Moore offers resonates with her. She took power directly from the Cauldron, which means she amassed more power than her natural reserve, even as a human turned Fae. And the Cauldron did not mean for her to take that power, which means she has more magic than the Cauldron allotted when it was turning her Fae. I'm not saying this means Nesta is literally a witch, but as she struggles with her identity and what her magic is, she embraces the concept of being a witch. Because yes, she is different from the other Fae, and it helps put a label on it to her enemies and those she wants to scare. Instead of being vulnerable with a I don't know what I am mindset, she can be like, yes, I am a witch, and scare them.
After the witch conversation, Moore glamours Elaine, and with her all looking, quote, drab, or in a way that someone as beautiful as Elaine could be drab, it is time to head to the human lands. Winnowing in, we immediately see the stone fortress so high that Feyre has to crane her neck back to see the top of it. There are thick iron gates with 12 guards covered from head to toe in plated armor. Through the iron gates, Feyre sees sprawled out fields of pastures and a lake, and a huge dark brown stone fortress in the distance. So basically, this is like a gated community with not a whole lot of the community aspect is what this is. Our crew is allowed to go to the main room of the guardhouse, but absolutely no further. That way, they do not see any of the defenses that Lord Nolan has in place. I love how Lord Nolan's like, you're not allowed to see. And Rhys is like, I could literally just cast out my Daemonic magic, no problem, and find everything out, but whatever.
Let's put ourselves in these human shoes. The prejudices against the Fae run deep. We've been talking about that since ACOWAR episode 1. And for good reason. The Fae used to enslave humans, and even after the treaty and some of the Fae fighting for their freedom, you don't forget that brutality. This this hatred has been passed down in the generations. The wall wasn't supposed to be permanent, but it ended up staying because the humans' lives were short and they forgot the ultimate goal of not having a physical separation after the two races cooled off a little. There's also always that looming fear of fairies because monstrous ones slip through the wall's cracks and terrorize villages, especially for humans located so close to the wall like Grayson's estate. They arm themselves with iron to ward off the Fae because they're under the impression that scares off Fae. But what's more, Nolan has been preparing with ash weapons because that most definitely kills fairies. Elaine mentioned he has been preparing for a Fae attack for a long time. So here's my assumption. Once Amarantha came into power and she allowed more attacks across the wall, which was 50 years ago, Nolan knew what's up. He knew something foul was happening in Prythian and that the bad guys were gearing up to come for the humans. He read the signs decades ago and has been doing his part to ensure they have every chance to survive the inevitable attack.
So we can say that he's been doing this for minimum like 40 years then?
I'd say so, yeah, which makes sense with the trees growing and like really keeping stockpiles. Yeah, like he's been planning this for decades.
Feyre thinks about how they could end any of these humans' lives without even lifting a finger. And while she's definitely right, that is the exact reason why these humans are so fearful of the Fae. And as a result, they of course put up this amount of precautions. Like, it's one of those things where from either standpoint, they're right. But do I think that Lord Nolan goes a little far? Sure. Yeah, a little bit. But also, they could literally end any of their lives without lifting a finger. That's a little spooky. Upon getting into the guardhouse, Feyre starts to look around, seeing the stone and the iron of the building. And while she tells herself that logically it wouldn't be enough to hold any of them, and especially not any of them together, quote, letting them shut us in here to wait. It rubbed against some nerve, made my body restless, a cold sweat breaking out, too small, not enough air. This is, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm back in like the beginning of ACOWAR specifically when she was taught like this was the sentence structure for a lot of that part of the book. But as Feyre will say to a curious Nesta, Feyre has problems with small places. And yeah, fair. Under the mountain, one of her challenges was being in a room where the walls were literally closing in on her and going to kill her. She lived in a prison cell for months. And of course, Tamlin locking her in the manor. I just want to give Feyre a big hug here. Apparently, I just want to hug all of the Archeron sisters this episode. I also cannot help but think of the fact that Elaine was going to live here. She says that it needs like a woman's touch, but would Nolan have let her change anything if he is so rooted in paranoia?
Well, first of all, Nesta said in ACOWAR, he's old, he'll die soon enough. But I think there's a difference between having all of these precautions in place and a woman's touch. Like her adding some paintings is not going to do anything else. Would he like it? I don't know if he'd care that much, but it's like, as long as she doesn't mess with my ash trees, then whatever.
Thank God Elaine got out of this. I am so glad. Nesta sees Feyre sharing her own vulnerability, something Feyre doesn't really show to Nesta very often, and Nesta offers up a piece of vulnerability in return. Quote, I can't get into a bathtub anymore. I have to use buckets. And hug to Nesta. This is just such a sweet moment between these two sisters. And of course, it's like Feyre's like, okay, we'll install something for you when you get back. Apparently, this is the first shower in all of Prythian, and it was born.
This is another reminder of Nesta's trauma. Feyre has even admitted that she gets a little wrapped up in war and isn't fully there for her sisters after they turn Fae like she wants to be. The gratitude in Nesta's eyes, these little moments just show how complex this sisterly relationship is, but that the love is ultimately there. And Grayson enters the chat. This is the first time we've seen him on the page, despite feeling his presence on the pages when it comes to Elaine since ACOWAR. Since we're reading this from Feyre's POV, the comparisons between a handsome human and the glowing beauty of the Fae are so stark. I can absolutely imagine Grayson is a fairy tale dream come true for any mortal. She even compares him to a knight who would swoop a beautiful maiden onto his horse and ride off into the sunset. And yet, he is plain and ordinary, not any kind of threat to the Illyrians and the Fae. Once again showing us readers just how different and magical and lethal the Fae are in this world.
And I also feel like Grayson's the embodiment of everything Elaine has been told she was going to marry into. He's that knight in shining armor, like you said, who's coming to save the damsel in distress. Again, Thank God Elaine got out of this relationship.
Well, and remember too, their mother had said, Nesta will marry for power and Elaine will marry for love. And this was Elaine marrying for love, even though it was with a lord's son, right? Although Nesta was going to be going for a prince, right? So a lord's son was like nothing comparatively. We'll soon enough learn that Grayson is aware that Elaine is Fae and he knows she is lying and trying to deceive him here. However, he still can't help but gasp for breath and stagger toward her. These two really are/were in love. And like I've said before on the podcast, I think he was genuinely terrified for her well-being when he thought that she was kidnapped. She has literally been missing for several months. Then, of course, Jurian recently arrived and explained what happened. And what's more, explains that Elaine is mated to a High Lord's son. But in this moment when he first sees her, his heart can't help but be relieved to see her again. In the first part of this conversation, he'll even warn his father against being rude to Elaine and the others. He'll even look at her engagement ring with pain in his eyes. However, this won't last very long though, because his prejudice against the Fae, which now includes her, will catch up with him. He right now though is wrapped up in the moment and just pulled toward his love. That is, until his father physically stops him from going to her.
Despite the fact that Elaine is actually standing at the head of our Fae group here, she is not the only Archeron sister stepping into a new role. Nesta has fully embraced her role as emissary to the human lands. After Elaine, who is shaking, just like terrified, greets Lord Nolan, which I wonder if she's also scared just like because it's Lord Nolan and he's a scary dude. Yeah, I think that's leaning more towards that than the fact that she's like lying and doing a ruse. I think it's definitely both, but I do think it's leaning more into the fact that she's just scared of Lord Nolan, which again, she was going to be his daughter-in-law. And the fact that Lord Nolan is also just completely unimpressed by her presence here. Nesta steps to Elaine's side at the head of the group to share that the wall has come down and that she has turned High Fae. And at least she shares like the Spark Notes version of it, basically. I am just beaming with pride for our girl Nesta here. She not only is stepping in front of the group, she is taking full responsibility as her role of emissary. She is also speaking long before any of the High Fae, long before Reese. And she is fully taking control of this meeting. Homegirl is getting down to business. She's like Thiessen from last episode. She is full-blown Mulan. Let's get down to business. I love it. But she's also sharing her story with not even 1 ounce of fear. Remember, it was just last episode when she stepped into this new role and decided to embrace courage and share her story to the High Lords. Look how far she's come in such a short time. Like, this is the same day, basically. They were just at the High Lords meeting, or at least day 2 of the High Lords meeting this morning. I'm just so proud of her. Sadly, though, much like Baron, Lord Nolan has no patience for these types of stories, which, side note real quick, Baron and Nolan, if it weren't for the Fae and human thing, they'd be great friends.
Yes, absolutely. Lord Nolan has a clever tactic to let our crew speak first, asking a few questions to see just how much of the truth they're going to divulge. And hey, they go with honesty minus Elaine also turning Fae, making it seem like it was only Nesta who was made Fae by the Cauldron. And mortal Elaine is with this group of Fae because she's their sister and there is no safer place right now than with them. They're all here to beg Grayson and his father to open their gates to any humans who can evacuate here, because now with the wall down, there isn't time for getting everyone out and away from this land.
Nolan's not having any of this plan, though. Quote, "Did you think that you could come to my house and deceive me with your fairy magic?" Because it turns out they already knew that Elaine and Nesta were turned High Fae, which I'm not going to lie, I love Reese and Feyre dearly, specifically Reese, because he's lived longer. This would have been an extremely helpful moment to use their, Daemati powers to see what they know so that they could change their tactic, so that they could lean into persuading him more. Like, saving the humans is so fucking important. Why would you not use every stinking tool at your disposal? You had no problem infiltrating Tarquin, goodest boy golden retriever, last book. But with Lord Nolan, grade A asshole, it's like, no, that's a line I will not cross. Anyway, it's fine.
But real quickly, they have like Jurian coming is so they would not even have that on the radar. So as far as they're
Jurian coming, I'm thinking with like what?
Making him evaluate. Oh yeah. Well, like what would they know though? Like what would they know? That's what I'm trying to say is that Nolan and Grayson knowing anything is not
So
even
off
on their
their
radar because it's so out of left field. I agree with you. And I think that is one of the issues in fantasy books is when characters do have so much power and then the storytelling just can't let all of those powers happen all the time, because then where's the story? Where's the suspense and whatnot? And that is definitely an issue throughout the ACOWAR series with the Daimati power.
Okay, fine. You make points. I'm still mad about it. You make fine points. Anyway, how do they know that the Archeron sisters were turned Fae? Because they didn't use their Daimati powers to figure it out. How did they find out?
Well, we got a plot twist, everybody. Jurian is here. Oh my goodness. And wait, what? He's good?
Jurian gives us quite the, I'll call it Jurian's tale, as he launches into his side of the story. Feyre notices that his eyes are bright, not with madness like she's always used to, but instead this time with clarity. So my question is Jurian's mask, for lack of a better term, madness? And that's the role he plays when he's around the King of Hybern or his cronies like he was in the Spring Court?
Yes and no. He played into what the King of Hybern expected from him. But at the same time, he admits that he didn't care what happened to him made him turn mad. So I think he's heightening the madness and using a mask with his madness motives in Hybern's presence. But is he actually mad and a little unhinged from all of his own trauma? Absolutely.
Yeah. Madness motives is also such a good phrase. I love that. The King of Hybern believed that spending 500 years on the, Amarantha's finger made him the madness motive. So he resurrected Jurian and supposedly turned him to his cause. As a result, Jurian has made the most of his situation since being resurrected, being surrounded by his enemies and being on the wrong side of the wall where, only a slight hinge in his plan. During this download, Jurian turns to Mor and, truly hurt, accuses her of being his friend and yet was so quick to believe that he was on Hybern's side. Jurian, let's look at the facts here for a second. You went cuckoo banana pants with Clythia and were glad to do it if it meant winning the war. You had a bad falling out with Miriam and Draken, two people that Mor is definitely closer with. You spent 500 years as a weird statement jewelry piece on the hand of an actual monster. You were resurrected by their number one enemy. You shot Asriel in the fucking chest. You showed up with Hybern's crew to the Spring Court. I don't judge Mor. I don't judge Mor for this. I would too believe that this dude is evil. Back to what we learned from Jurian. We learn that the queens are snakes. No shit, Jurian. It turns out that when he was instructed to go on Hybern's behalf to the human side of the continent, it took him little to no effort to convince the queens to join Hybern's cause and sell out, their human lands as a result. Which, just quickly thinking from Jurian's POV here, because he has given everything, including his madness motives, for the humans. To hear that these women who are human sold out other humans so quickly in exchange for youth and immortality, props to Jurian for continuing this ruse and not just obliterating them on the spot. But not all of these queens are shitsticks. One of them was, quote, noble enough to play the game. This was Demetra, the golden hair queen who gave our crew the half of the Book of Breathing's last book. However, the other queens found out about her playing the game behind their backs and was sold out to the Adder. We talked about this a lot last book. The other non-shitstick queen he tells us about is Vasa, who saw right through Jurian's good intentions on Hybern's part from the start and tried to warn the other queens against him. Now, she did not see through him being a spy for Hybern. She just thought he was, spewing Hybern's bullshit, and she was trying to warn the other queens against it. She tried to rally their own forces before the threat got too large. However, Vasa is too young and too brash, and she was blind to the lust in the other queen's eyes, not wanting to risk their one chance for youth and beauty. So they sold her out to a death lord who has a penchant for enslaving women. Oh, the irony that in just a few months, Vasa and Jurian are going to be two of the three members of the Band of Exiles and good buds.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Through this reread, I've just found myself thinking, man, with all the trauma he's been through, Jurian could really benefit from therapy. But hey, the life of a spy may seem like there's not much time to take care of yourself. I get it. When your schedule is packed, it's easy to let your priorities slip. But when we feel like we have no time for ourselves, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. Trust me, I know this on a very personal level.
Something that I unexpectedly had like a lot of anxiety around recently is travel. Like I've never done like a really big trip and I always have wanted to. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be totally fine. But then as it's getting closer, I'm like, oh my God. So actually this past week in therapy, we talked through a bunch of travel techniques that I can use to calm my mind, calm my anxiety and all this stuff. And now I have a little note in my phone. It's great. It's amazing. I've been doing it for over a year. It has absolutely changed my life, my husband's life. I won't speak for you, but I know it's been really beneficial for you as well.
Yep.
We are big therapy fans here at FFG.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge.
Never skip a therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/FFG today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/FFG.
When more press is about why Jurian is so obsessed with hunting Draken and Miriam, he has a perfectly good explanation for that too. It's what the world expects of him. Things did not end well between him and Draken and Miriam. Remember how he and Miriam were lovers, and then she knew and even encouraged his affair with Clythia to get insight into the enemy's side. But then Miriam didn't like how crazy Jurian was becoming from his pretend affair, which was the main reason she ended their relationship. And then she healed Draken and they fell in love. They married and mated the same night that Jurian killed Clythia, which ended up leading to his battle and subsequent torture and death at Amarantha's hands. Jurian had been allies with Draken during the war and knows he has a trained and ready legion that can turn the tide in this current war. So, to get them out of hiding, he has made it clear far and wide that he is looking for them, playing into the role that Hybern assumed of him, that he wants them dead for their betrayal to him, when really, he wants to beg their forgiveness and have them help fight against Hybern.
Last but not least, we learned from Jurian that right after the High Lord's meeting, Tamlin went straight to Hybern and told him, quote, everything about the meeting. I need to talk about this because I'm confused. Did Tamlin make everything up that he shared with Hybern? Did he mix in some lies and truth? Did he seriously think this would not get back to any of the High Lords? Is he an idiot? I vividly remember reading this for the first time, or I was at least listening to it, and I wanted to like throw my earbuds out of my ears. I was so mad.
I think it's very Severus Snape double agent balance. I know that I said that before, but he is that Severus Snape character in the double agent sort of way. Yes, meaning some truths mixed in with some lies. The other High Lords were also very careful about what they said in front of Tamlin. Sure, he knows that they're all planning to move their forces south, but I don't think he gleaned any major insight that the king couldn't already guess. And genuine question, what else was Tamlin supposed to do after the meeting? Hybern had already mostly invaded the Spring Court. If Tamlin suddenly disappeared from Hybern's grasp and sided with the courts, he would be showing his hand way too early, and the king could switch tactics knowing that Tamlin was actually a spy against him. By Tamlin continuing to play spy, the king can be in a false sense of security with the information Tamlin has been allowed to know. And he doesn't see the Spring Court as a threat, so he won't just, kill everyone in Tamlin. But I do agree with you that when I first read this, I was furious with Tamlin and of course he's really a bad guy, which of course is the point for us readers. We are in Feyre's head, and just like the first time Tamlin cozied up to Hybern, she is very quick to assume the absolute worst in Tamlin because she understandably has the right to assume the worst, and he is not that black and white.
Fair. Could he have also just not said anything to Hybern? Couldn't he have just gone to the meeting and shut his fucking man-bear pig mouth about it?
Okay, so let's just play devil's advocate here. So Hybern knows he goes to the High Lord's meeting, and then Tamlin comes back and refuses to say anything?
No, what if Hybern didn't know he went to the High Lord's meeting? What if Tamlin actually was sneaky and didn't tell Hybern about
I don't
the
think Tamlin is that sneaky. It was going to somehow get back to the king. I don't like Tamlin. I think that he has made some very poor choices. And I'm trying to put ourselves out of the narrative that Feyre is so ingrained in, because
that's fair.
It is, we do only get that limited narration from her.
Well, apparently I'm still in it because in addition to Tamlin being an absolute snake, Jurian has another big warning.
Hybern is currently camped in the Spring Court and launching an attack on the Summer Court tomorrow. Uh-oh.
He also informs our crew that when they meet Hybern's armies on the battlefield tomorrow, hammer the left flank with everything you've got, because it looks like Hybern is putting all of the untrained nobles in that spot. And because they're spoiled and untested, it will spook the army in total, causing their courage to falter.
Which will indeed turn out to be true.
Go Jurian. Wow. Who knew we'd be saying that?
I would never say that.
All the while, Jurian is going to go back to the continent and start letting some things slip about the Queen's agenda with their subjects. And watch the subjects absolutely turn against the monarchy. That will keep those queens quite busy. I love how both Jurian and our inner circle is like, what wars can we stir up? Can we make a coup happen? Amazing. Can we make a Cold War happen? Awesome. Let's do both.
I love it. It's a great strategy. It is a great strategy. Yes.
One of my biggest pet peeves with the whole like Jurian, I am the spy, or at least I should say like I am another spy in this fucking book because there's so many, is that on previous reads, it felt very quick to believe that this dude who's got some evidence stacked against him is actually true. And I should be clear, I'm not faulting the logic behind why they believe him so quickly, because both Feyre and Rhys look into his mind using their Damati powers and they find what he speaks to be true. Now, to be clear, he does say like, look into my mind, look into my mind. So I think that's their green light to use their fucking powers for once. I am just saying more from a story pacing standpoint. It does feel very quick. With Tamlin, we have chapters of going back and forth on whether he's being honest, whether he's good. And even right now in our story, it still feels very unsure. I do feel like when it comes to Jurian, we don't get enough time to digest the like, oh, you're actually a good guy. It's just like, Jurian's not the enemy. We're good to go. Like, I think one of the chapter like first lines is like, Jurian is not my enemy. And then we just like move on. And it just kind of, it feels very jarring for me as a reader.
I hear what you're saying. And the fact that they do look into Jurian's mind and realize he's being truthful carries a lot of weight. This book is so fast moving, with the bulk of it occurring over a few weeks. And they are always having to look ahead to the next thing as they desperately try to keep up with Hybern. So I don't feel like they have the time or the mental capacity to think over this, especially when they do have the proof. And they do also process it each in their own ways. Part of why Jurian went so hard seemingly on Hybern's side is that he fully expected Rhys to look into his mind back at the end of ACOWAR and realize his true intentions. And yeah, that would have been a really good idea. Although we can appreciate why Rhys didn't. He didn't want to see Amarantha. Feyre didn't look into his mind in the Spring Court earlier this book because she took him at face value. We already talked about how that was not the best idea. She doesn't, however, have the same history with Jurian like the others. So even though we can give her a hard time for not using her Damati powers, she was never friends with him. And all she's heard is how crazy he is, and she witnessed how bad he was in Hybern. So why look into his mind when she thought she already knew what she'd find? I also wonder if the Hybern twins had shielded his mind as well, because they obviously were shielding their own. Yeah. I love it was when they were in the Spring Court, that's when Jurian knew that he could trust her. He knew she was someone who would fight for the humans, fight for what's right, because he saw her do exactly that for the children of the Blessed. As a whole, our inner circle is in disbelief. Feyre has had a hard time wrapping her head around the fact that he is on their side, even when she gets the proof from mind reading. Just like Rhys, who will admit to Jurian that he wouldn't believe a word of this if he didn't look into his mind. Yet even with Jurian's truth laid bare, they're not willing to share some of their information about Lucien going to find Vassa, for instance, which goes to show that yes, they accept he is on their side, but Jurian is not one of them who gets to know all of their secrets, which is a smart move and a show don't tell way of saying that, yeah, they believe him, but can't fully trust him with everything. Moore will later talk to Feyre about her reaction. Quote, I'm too old for these sorts of surprises. You and me both, girl. She'll admit that she just assumed Amarantha broke him and didn't truly question whether he was actually good still. She'll question herself, recognizing how hard it is to grasp the fact that an enemy is actually a friend. Quote, what didn't I see? What did I overlook or miss? It always makes me reassess myself more than anything. This is a hard lesson in war, yes, but also in life, when someone turns out to be someone different than they've always led to believe. A bit ironic, coming from Moore with her own secrets that she's hiding. And, you know, she has the truth of power. I wonder if she did her own power of truth scan on Jurian, like her own version of Damati, looking into his mind to know that he was truly being honest. When Rhys looks into Jurian's mind and learns exactly where and when they plan to attack and how many, he immediately relays this information to Azriel, who vanishes to warn Cassian and move the Legion. The Illyrian Legion will end up flying to the northern border of the Winter Court, camp out there, there, and in the early morning before the battle, they will fly to Summer for the fight. So that's good. Less magic Reese and crew will have to use to winnow them all. Kier and his Darkbringers will winnow to the battlefield around the same time that the Illyrians arrive. And they've sent messages to Helion and Kallias to see if they can rally their troops to join in time. And of course, they've warned Tarquin to prepare for an attack of his territory.
However, we're still in Nolan's estate, and we still have 2 humans to deal with. Faye returns to Nolan and lays down the law. Listen, Mr. Nolan man, you're going to take in people, any people, who can make it to these walls, and the Inner Circle will supply them with all the wards they need to keep the evil Fae out. Pretty sick deal, in my opinion, honestly. But stubborn man Nolan, again, him and Baron would get along great. He does not want riffraff wandering through his lands. As Feyre points out, he only wants the rich or the chosen to be allowed inside. Royally fuck this guy. Oh my god.
Luckily, Jurian steps in, which makes total sense that he's the one to reason with Nolan. First of all, he's a human. He came here with the truth, so he's already made a good first impression with Nolan. Because while our crew came here to help, they did kind of really lie about Elaine being mortal and tried to trick Nolan and Grayson. Whereas Jurian's all about honesty here, winning points with Nolan. Jurian is also the only human who fought in the war 500 years ago. He has more right to hate the Fae than anyone, but he is correctly placing his hatred and blame on the bad guys. And he recognizes who the good Fae are because they helped in the last war and they're helping this war, and the humans need them on their side. He has seen firsthand the destruction that Hybern can cause. Whether he actually knew Nolan's ancestor or not, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that Jurian was more so on the continent, so he didn't actually know his ancestor. But the point is, he's like, we humans need to stick together. Your ancestors fought for you to even have this privilege. And now you might as well be spitting on his grave by not embracing all humans and protecting them. Back in Jurian's day, all humans were slaves to the Fae. There was none of this nobility and hierarchy among the humans like Nolan is presenting now, which again infuriates Jurian. So what does he do? Threaten to send Hybern straight to Nolan. Oh my goodness. I mean, he's got the cards.
He really went for the jugular.
Yeah, like he's got the cards. Like, why not play them to his advantage? I love it. Nolan deserves his verbal smackdown. And hey, like I said, it works. He's like, fine, we'll take them. Just don't bring Hybern here, please.
Again, go Jurian. Like, I'm actually rooting for Jurian about 50 times more than I thought I would be on this podcast.
Me too.
But people who I will never, ever, ever root for is Grayson. Being ever the gentleman, turns to Elaine to make one thing very, very clear. For many reasons, he is diddly done with her, and thus begins a very, very ugly breakup.
This is a very different tune than what he was signaling only minutes ago before the Jurian reveal. And I think what made him snap is when he asked Elaine if she thought she could come here and live as a lie, and she kind of admits yes. That's the moment he turns ugly, as if it's truly sinking in that the woman he loves was ready to lie to him and pretend she was human when she really is Fae.
Well, and they've also been here for a minute, and we don't really get any descriptions on, is Grayson looking at Elaine? Is he looking at Feyre / a Jurian who's, like laying down the law? I'm willing to bet he was looking at Elaine. I imagine that in those moments, it's sinking in. She's safe, but oh my God, she's not. Like, she is not the person I knew. He brings up the high Fae mate and how she, quotes, belongs to him. I love the moment so much where Elaine says his name is Lucian, almost like that mated side of her instinctually came to his defense. But Grayson continues with, quote, "You're his mate. Do you even know what that means?" Ugh, he is outright talking down to her and belittling her when she's the one who's high Fae now. He's human. Well, and there's that moment where she's like, I don't belong to anyone, but my heart belongs to you. This is what I love about Elaine. Like, I'm really becoming much more Team Elaine than I thought I would be. When Grayson first came into the scene, he is looking like this knight in shining armor, right? And what do knights in shining armors do in stories? They save these damsel in distresses. So when Elaine is like, I don't belong to anyone, that is her saying, I am my own fucking person. She is not the same damsel who needs saving. And I don't even know if she ever was that person, but I do think Grayson viewed her as that person. But she is instead now someone who is wanting to choose who she spends her life with. She got thrust this mating bond upon her. And she's like, I want a choice in my life. And right now, she believes that choice is entirely Grayson. Sadly, the person who she does choose does not want it in return. And so he goes in for the verbal slap. Take that ring off. I am going to give Lord Grayson 35 seconds of the benefit of the doubt. He is angry. He loved Elaine and was also equally excited for their life together. He has grown up with a father who is extremely prejudiced to Fae, and of course, those values seeped into him as well. He is angry that she suddenly has a mate, as we see in the moment where, he yells at Rhys that like the Fae males are coming to take all of their women because their own Fae women aren't fuckable enough. We as readers know that nothing has happened between Elaine and Lucien, but quite frankly, Grayson doesn't know that. So he doesn't know if she's like gone off and done anything with Lucien and like had another relationship. However, all of this time, that was my 35 seconds for Grayson. You are being an ass though, my good sir. Obviously, she had no choice in being turned high Fae. She is devastated with this turn that her life has taken. And he is taking out his anger on her.
Yep. Exactly.
So rightfully, Nesta, proud as any queen and just like any big sister would, comes up and slaps Grayson across the face. Good job.
Yes, that's such a big sister move. Protect your little one. Elaine does not take this well. She was making so much progress before Grayson came back into the picture. Not saying that she had moved on from him, but she was starting to take baby steps toward living life again with gardening and baking bread and feeling understood now that her gift was identified as a seer. She even smiled, which we talked about a few episodes ago about how big of a deal that alone was. But this was all while she was in Valaris and the war still felt somewhat far away. She took a chance going to Grayson's estate. Like Nicole said, there was the practical reason and her personal reason, where she was chasing her heart's desire and hoping for an opportunity to reconnect with her fiance.
It's almost like she's now having to start from level 0 again. This is the reboot, basically. This was the last hope of her holding on to her human side, and it is now gone. So this is just one more break in her beautiful little heart.
And as we all know, this did not go well. It went very badly, causing her to lose Grayson all over again in an even more painful way. Because this time, she wasn't taken from him. He consciously told her to F off, which just shattered her heart in a completely different and worse way than before. It's so sad, but not surprising that now she's back to that shell of herself as she mourns the life that she should have had. Void of any hope for her future, with no desire to live like she had started feeling again recently. The final tether snapping of her connection to the human world that she loved so much. So she quietly cries, staring at nothing and refusing to take off the iron ring that represents her and Grayson's love.
Do we give Grayson an L? I think we give Grayson
let's give Grayson
an L.
Yes.
Absolutely. This is a capital L. Good sir. The night before our first real formal battle of this book, like we've had a few like ambushes, but this is a formal battle. And we're in part 3. Feyre is unable to sleep, so she goes to find Rhys, using that same tug that she used on that final day under the mountain. She finds him and wordlessly slips her arms around him, and he holds her to his side as he whispers, "A lot of soldiers are going to die today." We have talked endlessly on this podcast about Rhys being self-sacrificing, how he would always rather put his own life at risk than risking those who are loyal to him. This is a moment where he is having to deal with the guilt and the burden of being High Lord and sending many soldiers to die because he cannot give himself up in exchange this time. That would have been him giving himself up to Hybern, which I think we can all agree wouldn't solve a fucking thing.
And only to his mate will he show that vulnerability, the grief and despair that there's nothing he can do to stop the fact that people will die the next day in battle. Speaking of, the next day, it's battle time. We are in the southern part of the summer court, and Hybern's horde is exactly where Jurian told them they'd be as they march up from the spring court border. This Hybern army may be huge, but it doesn't seem like the king is here to lead it. Tamlin and Jurian aren't here either, which correctly indicates that this huge army is merely a taste of the true force. His real army, the gigantically huge one, is further south at the edge of the human territory, but our crew does not know that yet. Rhys has cloaked the Illyrian legions and Kyr's Darkbringers, so they all take Hybern by surprise after they cross the border. Finally, we got one on Hybern! Kind of, but we'll get to that soon enough. Cassian is right there at the front lines with his commands. Shields! And our Night Court forces charge! Illyrians spear from the skies in neat, precise lines. The Darkbringers charge on foot with their swaths of shadows. Ooh. Our 3 Batboy leaders spread out along the front lines with Rhys's power roiling and ready to hammer the right flank while Cassian aims for the left like Jurian recommended. But Rhys is strategically conserving his power just in case the king or the cauldron arrive. All our warriors have also taken nuanced Faebane antidote, but it doesn't seem that the enemy is using Faebane today, which is good.
I want all battles from here on out reenacted by Lexi. Like, that was incredible. This battle takes place on a sloped grassy plain where our forces have the advantage of the high ground. And Hybern soldiers are in between the swarming army charging down the hillside and a shallow river to their back.
Which, they realize they're at a disadvantage too late.
As Cassian explains to Feyre in his segment I'm going to call Battle Advice with Cassian, success in battle is often decided not by numbers, but by picking the location of where to fight. All the while, Feyre and Mor are watching this battle from a tree-covered hill. This is a place that Azriel scouted out the night before, and Cassian deemed it would be best to watch the left flank burn. The goal here is for Feyre to get a feel of formal battle and how it works within an Illyrian unit. And they will sit here for hours as the battle rages on.
I would have such a hard time sitting there, and I know she does too, and especially Mor. Like, yeah. I would either have to not look because I'm a total chicken, or I'd have to be down in there. But, like, I can't watch, like, something really, really bad happening in front of me like that.
I agree. I would don my battle armor and charge and probably die very quickly, but at least I wasn't sitting on a hilltop.
To be honest, the Hufflepuff in me would probably be going just, like, trying to make myself busy, like, getting, like, healing stuff ready or something like that.
See, that I don't think that's a cowardly thing. I think that's a brave, loyal Hufflepuff thing. You just want to help people.
Thank you. As Feyre watches what unfolds in the battlefield, she acknowledges that there is no place for her in this kind of battle. We talked a lot about this during the Battle of Adriata and how it is different from this kind of battle where there are no innocents to protect in the moment. Here, it is lines of soldiers battling each other where you don't know up from down, and the only way to survive is to fight as a unit with your fellow soldiers at your side. This is not an attack on a city where you need to save the innocents. This is soldier against soldier, with only killing as many as you can and staying alive in the process as the goal.
I also just want to highlight that Feyre is not very trusting of people when it comes to specifically strangers, or at least those who she doesn't truly know on a soul deep level. She mentioned right before going to Bryaxis that she does not trust the other High Lords to uphold their end of the bargain. Back in ACOWAR, she didn't trust a soul, and honestly, fairly. She is someone who you have to earn that trust of Feyre's. And in order to fight on the front lines, she would need to have all of her faith in those who are fighting at her sides and her back. Whereas in the chaos that was Adriata and Valaris, she was either fighting on her own, which, you know, is every man for themselves, or she was fighting with Mor, someone who's her family and who has earned her trust.
I think this all really illustrates her lack of experience fighting as a unit and her realization of it. Like you said, she's a great warrior as an individual, but that's completely different than being a skilled soldier in an army. You could argue Mor is the same way, but she has the experience and knows how to fight with the Bat Boys, knows how to read these battlefields in a way that Feyre just doesn't know yet. That's part of what this hilltop observation is supposed to do, help her understand so that when she is ready for battle, she'll know what she's getting herself into. Cassian slamming into the left flank. Siphons are unleashing bursts of power. Pew! Illyrians are hitting Hybern hard with their steel, and the Darkbringers are right there with them. Our whole force is being precise and cool. They are unbreakable, and it is making this big but not the biggest Hybern army panic. When the left flank breaks apart and the nobles either die or flee, the rest of Hybern's soldiers are like, nope, 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 I'm out of here.
Can we talk about Cassian for a minute?
Always, always, always.
At one point, Cassian sets his eye on a Hybern commander, and ditching his tall shield for instead a small rounder one, he launches himself into a run towards this commander, cutting his way through enemy soldiers who get in his way. Quote, he didn't stop moving, seemed to know where every opponent fought both ahead and behind, and seemed to breathe in the flow of battle around him. I'd never seen anything like it. The skill and precision. It was like a dance. Which Pause really quickly because Fae-vorite thinks this in her mind noggin and more answers out loud. For him, that's what battle is, a symphony. Why did Moore answer Fae-vorite's thoughts?
I knew you were going to comment about this. As I was reading that, I was like, oh my gosh, Nicole's going to freak out.
Fae-vorite does think in her head, like, I guess I said that out loud. And I don't know, maybe I've read too many like mind-to-mind speak books, but like, what the heck is this? Like, that is insane.
As much as I would love for this to have a deeper meaning like it does in other books, I'm going to be honest. I think it's just an indication of Fae-vorite basically having an out-of-body experience. But yes,
I know you're right. I know you're right. But the second I read that, I was like, Shakuse! Like, I was like,
where are the italics?
Where are my italics? Anyway, back to Cassian. Because with the spear heading his way, oh no! Knees bent, wings tucked in, he takes the full impact of that spear into his shield, keeping up with his run towards the commander. Yes, this is where he gets the injury that Nesta will notice later. Cassian, shedding his sword and shield, picks up a different fallen spear and puts his entire body weight into it, hurling it at the commander. And it hits the target so hard that the commander was knocked clean off his horse. Damn, Cassian.
Cassian hasn't been in a battle like this in most of the Illyrians' lives. He is a skilled general who Fae fear, yes, but this is him at his best on full display, and very few have seen him like this before. There hasn't been the opportunity to. Afterward in the camps, everyone will be whispering about how badass he is. He's a living legend in the making, and I like to think he's earning some of that Illyrian trust that lacked before because he's, quote, just a bastard. No, he is the biggest and baddest motherfucking warrior out there that no one can compare to. I love you so much, my Cassian. And the Illyrians might not like him, but damn it, do they respect strength and power.
Because of this display, Hybern begins to flee the battle and runs right into Tarquin's army. Trapped between the Illyrians and the Darkbringers on one side and Tarquin's 2,000 soldiers on the other, Hybern gets on their knees and surrenders the battle. Because we're in the summer court, though, it's up to Tarquin to decide what to do with these soldiers. So what does our golden retriever High Lord boy do? He saves a few of them to be questioned, and the others, he uses his magic to drown them on dry land. Wow.
You go, Tarquin. I love seeing him in action like this because we didn't up close like this in the Battle of Adriata, and he's using the same technique that Fae-vorite uses. After this big battle, it's time for the Prythian forces to celebrate by hydrating in the healthy, replenishing way, not in the way that Tarquin is taking care of the Hybern soldiers. Just need to clarify that.
Staying hydrated is not just about water or getting drowned on high land. You also need plenty of electrolytes. Enter LMNT. LMNT is a science-backed zero-sugar electrolyte drink mix designed to support healthy hydration and a healthy lifestyle. LMNT has sodium, potassium, and magnesium to get you feeling and performing your best without dodgy ingredients like artificial colors or sugars to hold you back.
We're all guaranteed to find an LMNT flavor we love. There are a wide range of flavors from watermelon salt to mango chili to citrus salt to raspberry salt. I could honestly go on and on. And that's not even mentioning the chocolate salt flavors. I really feel like I'm giving myself a treat whenever I have my daily LMNT, except this treat is good for my taste buds and my hydration.
LMNT came up with a fantastic offer for our listeners. Get a free sample pack with any LMNT purchase at drinklmnt.com/FFG. And be sure to try the new LMNT Sparkling Water, a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. In the hours following the battle, Fae-vorite and Moore winnow the previous Illyrian camp that had been along the winter border to this new camp that they are now setting up on the edge of today's battlefield in the southern summer court. I do have a quick question, because this happens multiple times in this book and even multiple times in this chapter stretch. How do you winnow that many people? Is it the constant back and forth? Is it everyone holds hands and it's like up to 100? Like how?
I think that you can winnow small groups of people. That's my understanding. And depending on how powerful you are, you can take several more people. But I don't think you can take, just throwing out numbers here, like maybe like more than 5 at a time. So that's why it does drain their power so much, is just winnow back and forth with so many people bringing them with you. Yeah.
Oh my God, that is a lot.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
I think it's more than 5. I want to say it's more than 5 because that feels like so little because there's thousands of them.
Yes, but that's why they are always saying how it is really expending their magic. And think, this is High Lords. It is really hard for a High Lord to lose their power, to lose that magic because they have so much of it. So that is really emphasizing how big of a deal it is with all this winnowing. And that is Hybern's goal here, is to make them do that so much so that they don't have their power.
That checks. Okay, that makes sense to me. Thank you for explaining that. That was really bothering me. Hours later, Nesta and Feyre are cutting up linen for bandages when Rhys and Cassian approach them, both exhausted and very dehydrated from battle, as Rhys chugs the jug that Feyre offers to him. I just picture this. She offers him a jug, but then she was like going to grab a cup for him. But by the time she like went over to reach for the cup, he was like chugging the jug. And I just see that so vividly.
Nesta sees Cassian for the first time since the battle, and while she did not watch this battle, she has heard about his badassery on the field today. But the first thing she notices when she sees him is that he's hurt. And guess what? Nobody else detected this. Only Nesta was able to sense that under his armor, he has a swollen wrist. Neon lights are flashing, friends. Mating bond, mating bond. This might be a minor injury, but it still needs to be wrapped. So don't worry, Cassian. Nesta's got you. I love how determined she is to fix it for him. These two are just so stinking cute in their own way. When she's done wrapping his wrist, Feyre even thinks, quote, she did not open her mouth for some barbed retort. Okay, Nesta has been really nice to Cassian lately, everybody. Stop thinking the worst of her when she is trying. I understand why people think the worst of her, including her own sister. But she's better than this with Cassian.
Well, her and Cassian have this very, very, very passionate stare off. But the moment is quickly over because we hear from a distance, "You're hurt!" And it's more. And this is maybe the only time I'm going to say this. And this is just a nice little shout to our Fourth Wing coverage. God fucking damn it, more. God, like, I'm saying it because...
That's not even an L. You're just skipping right to the GFDD.
I am. Because I guess it's God fucking damn it, more / Cassian. Because it's really both of them in this moment.
Yes.
Because as Cassian hears Moore's voice, he snatches his hand away from Nesta. And it's described as that. It's snatching. And looks to Moore and immediately falls into like laughter and banter with her. As Nesta continues to stare at her hands and almost like closing them, like as if his hand was still intertwined with hers. And then she leaves, which I want to just pause for a second, because does Nesta know that Moore and Cassian slept together 500 years ago? Maybe not. If she does not know, I'm assuming that after this encounter, she will have some kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that they have some kind of history, whether it's that long ago or not. And it really breaks my heart for Nesta here. And I am giving Cassian a L, if not a GFDS, for leaving her high and dry after the moment that they shared together. We know from the bonus chapter of ACOWAR, which is Nesta and Cassian, the Wings and Embers, that Cassian still has some very messy feelings about Moore. From that scene as the bonus chapter in ACOWAR, quote, he had lovers, some for a night, some for months, and Moore never cared. But this woman standing before him like a pillar of steel and flame, Cassian didn't want to tell Moore about her, about how he touched her neck. I do wonder if Cassian, when he's holding Nesta's hand and like staring at her, like, you know, her being able to sense him, that is some major real mate shit right there. And Cassian is still in this twisted pattern with Moore. So as Moore comes up, he like snatches his hand away because he panics, because he goes back to default, basically. Even though he's bantering with Moore, there is no way that Cassian did not notice Nesta leaving, though. That's why I'm giving him a GFDC, because there's no way he didn't notice. But him not acknowledging, oh my God, the woman I'm falling really hard for just walked away because she's clearly hurt, but I'm going to stay here with Moore instead. Like, that just bad, Cassian, bad. You're more emotionally intelligent than this.
I agree with you 1,000,000%. And we don't want to discount the relationship, the platonic relationship that he and Moore do share. And they have been together for 500 years, and he was just on a battlefield, and someone who he cares about is approaching him and is concerned for him. And of course, he's going to acknowledge that. I agree. He is way more emotionally intelligent than this, especially with Nesta. And he could have played it a lot better. But I also don't want to discount his relationship with Moore and what they really do share.
I'm not discounting his relationship with Moore because I think there's a difference between him being like, don't worry, Moore, I'm fine. Like, look, my arm is healed. And him blatantly ignoring Nesta, pulling his hand away and falling into banter with her. That's where I'm more giving him the GFDC.
Okay. All right.
Oh, Feyre stumbles into her and Rhys's tent hours and hours later, and she finds a laying down but yet not asleep Rhys. And even though she is exhausted, she sees that her mate is struggling to come back down from that battlefield, and we get tent sex round 2. But this time, it is a fade in, fade out scene. This scene is here for all of the same reasons the previous tent sex scene was on the page. It is wanting to feel close to your partner after battle, wanting to calm Rhys down on that adrenaline, wanting to feel each other's bodies because they don't know how many days they have left. But while this one was not the Rhys's roars of pleasure drowned out the injured and dying, this one is a fade to black, fade up, and her legs are on his shoulders, and he's panting over her. That is how the scene goes. And I would have actually preferred this to be a full scene because we don't have the injured and dying outside. They massively won the battle today versus the previous one, which would have been an awesome fade in, fade out because the screams and the dying, I didn't need that. I did not need that one bit.
I'm going to be honest. I don't know if I needed either. But that's neither here or there. Their conversation turns to the battlefield today, and Rhys sweetly tells her that thinking of his mate focused him and centered him, helping him get through it. He's never fought while mated before. This time, he has someone to fight for in a way he never has. Someone who needs him to live, who is waiting for him, who gives him inner strength. Feyre goes on to explain what we've been talking about during these battle episodes, about how she isn't ready for this kind of battle because it's so different from Adriata and Valaris. She stumbles over her words, having a hard time admitting them even to herself, let alone to her mate. But he recognizes that she is having to sort through her own thoughts to really get that personal clarity, and he's patiently listening.
Rhys and Feyre are normally very open in their communication. So why is this moment such a nervous moment for Feyre to tell him that she does not want to be on these battlefields? Number one, as she states later in the scene, she feels like a coward. And if there's anything we know about Feyre Cursebreaker, she, A, does not like being a coward, and B, she is not a coward. This is still the same woman who fought the Midgard worm, the Adder, who sacrificed herself for her entire family, and also this is the woman who went to the Spring Court.
Well, and let's not forget, she also went under the mountain knowing that it was almost certain death to save Tamlin.
Yes.
I know you blocked that out, but we can't forget it.
I can't. I will never. Coward is not something we associate with Feyre, and it's definitely not something she associates within herself. Number two, since her and Rhys have known each other, he's always pushed her to her limits. Think back to last book and all of their training sessions. He sent her to the Weaver. He had her train alone so that the Adder would find her. And he also reminded her, rather rudely, but also honestly, that she has powers to hold her own against creatures like the Adder. But this is different than just pushing through and stretching your limits. This is trained battle where you need years and years of this kind of training to be in this type of unit. Number three, she knows that Rhys has always seen her as a fighter. Hell, he fell in love with her when she was fighting the Midgard worm, and she reminded him of Cassian. I'm sure there's parts of her that worry that if she's not seen as the fighter or, that super courageous stronghold, he would love her less. Now, obviously, that's not the case, but that's more just like her anxiety in her brain. We've talked about this, but one of the reasons I do struggle with this particular plot point is because I just don't feel like it was needed, because it's presented like this is her only option to fight. Yeah. It's either the front lines or sit on the sidelines, right? But that's not the only two options, as Feyre will demonstrate over and over again, between infiltrating Hybern's camp, her and Amren's mission to the Cauldron in the final battle, her going to see the Suriel in the next battle.
Well, and then there's also how Moore will fight in the next battle as well. She doesn't belong with the Illyrians or the Darkbringers, and Feyre even is wondering, like, oh my gosh, like, she doesn't belong here kind of thing. She instead is kind of being like a guard for Feyre and her sisters, yes. But she will, of course, eventually go into the battle, and yes, she will be essential. She will make an impact, even though she's not with one of these specific units.
Yes. Like, I guess what I'm saying is I'm not mad at Feyre's logic here. It makes logical sense. I'm just saying I don't think the story would have lost anything if we didn't have this particular plot point.
I agree with you all around that the plot point does not make sense where she does not have to be in one unit or another. And I could also see Rhys I don't want to say influencing because that sounds way too much like Tamlin, and I'm not meaning it like that at all. But he and his brothers have trained as Illyrians as that unit. And so that is what they are familiar with when it does come to that battle. But that again brings back more and how she is vital and how she is able to fight and be really important in those battles too. And Feyre can contribute in that way as well.
Like, here's what I could have seen is she sitting on the sidelines for the beginning when it is very formal battle, when it is front lines and all that kind of stuff. Then when that starts to get a little bit more messy, that's when she can go in. So then we still get that that like zoomed out point of view as readers to the story. And also we would have still gotten this shit, like, where can I be most helpful right now? Oh, it's not on the battlefield. It's with the Suriel. I don't think the story lines or the story plot would have changed that much.
Rhys, of course, is so supportive and understanding because he's a gold star book boyfriend. He reminds her of what you were just saying, Nicole, that she isn't a coward at all and she has proved herself. He validates her feelings, saying that war is ugly and fighting like in these battles is only part of it. Her presence and support before and after battle makes a huge difference and she shouldn't underestimate that. What a good partner. I feel like I've heard my own version of this from Jake before when I'm deep in postpartum and day in and day out feeling like I'm not doing anything. The moms will totally understand this, but he reminds me that I'm a loving mother and every little thing is important, even if it doesn't feel big in the grand scheme of things. Rhys is telling Feyre that she is a key part in all of this and her small actions speak volumes and are foundational for all of the war efforts.
Oh, we get a montage. The next 1 to 3 days after battle are for resting and healing.
And despite Asriel's scout teams looking for the rest of Hybern's host, they can't find anything. Well, we'll learn it's in part because the king has used the Cauldron to cloak the true Hybern host at the border of Spring and the human lands. And the fact that they can't find anything is super frustrating for Feyre in particular because she has Bryaxis to unleash upon Hybern. But she needs to wait until the full force of Hybern is upon them before she reveals her monster card, because that is one thing that they have that Hybern does not know about.
The 4th day, however, is for teeny tiny little tasks that Cassian gives the armies to keep them from getting restless and grumbling too much. What is this task he gives them? Dig a trench around the camp that we're not staying at for very long. 1 day later, the trench is about halfway finished, and we have some news from our spy master, Asriel. It turns out that Hybern somehow skirted around their legion here at the summer/spring court border and sent an entire force between autumn and summer up to the winter court border.
Which is exactly where our crew just moved from for this first battle.
This is quite the head scratcher, because why would Hybern split his army like that, especially to go north where the Prythian army is so close? We will later learn that this is just yet another way that Hybern is multiple steps ahead of them, because he is trying to distract the Prythian forces by tricking them to go up north and picking their forces off both in number and also weakening them energy/magic wise. Sadly, our crew does fall for Hybern's evil chess playing.
So our crew needs to adjust their plan. Kallias and Vivian have been alerted to the oncoming Hybern force going up to the Winter Court so they can be ready with their armies. Tarquin, Rhys, and our other friends debate what to do. They don't want to give up this good southern position at the southern summer court border because they know that the fight will eventually go south to the human lands. And damn it, they fought so hard to earn this spot. But they also just can't let Hybern's army march north unchecked to wreak havoc on the rest of Prythian and leave the Winter Court to fight them alone. They also can't afford to split their army in two. They just don't have enough soldiers to hold down the fort here in the summer court for the inevitable southern battle and march north to fight Hybern heading to Winter Court. Don't worry, friends. Varian has a brilliant beyond brilliant plan. He dismisses all the captains and generals, leaving only Cressida, Tarquin, and the Inner Circle, because this is a super duper secret plan. He explains they should create a glamour here at their summer court camp, so if anyone looks here, it appears that there is a full army camped at the southern location, and they'll also cast spells to prevent anyone from actually coming up to it. Did they take a page out of the Wizarding World's Muggle Repellent Handbook? That's what they do at the Quidditch World Cup and at Hogwarts. Anyway, with the glamour in place here at their summer court camp, Tarquin and Rhys's armies actually march north under a sight shield. As good of a strategy as this is, the downside is that it takes a lot of energy for a powerful crew to exert that much magic. They are glamoring so it looks like a whole army is located in one place, and they are making their whole army invisible as they move north. And Tarquin has to winnow all the soldiers who can't fly, so he's completely empty by the time they do arrive. He insists that he's better at fighting with steel anyway, which does make sense for a young High Lord, because most of the time he's been in power as a High Lord, his magic has been stifled by Amarantha, so he hasn't really had the chance yet to hone his almighty High Lord power yet, unlike Callias and Helion, who are older than him and who have had just more time with their power in general. Azriel finds the Hybern army at the northern edge of the Summer Court eastern border. We need a map tracking all this travel, my goodness. So Hybern is almost at the Winter Court as they moved up along the border of summer and autumn, and now they're located at the edge of summer's northeastern border. Are you all tracking me? They've stopped their northern march for the day and are starting to settle in here for the night. With our crew's plan complete, the Illyrian Legion, Summer Court army, and Darkbringers arrive to this camp hidden from Hybern's army. Except, wait, they aren't catching Hybern off guard like they expected because Hybern has tricked them. Again,
I think is actually what it is. This battle is very, very different. First and foremost, it is Nesta, Mora, and Feyre who are sitting on the edge of their camp watching the battle rage below. We can immediately see that, thanks to Jurian's warning, our Legion had the upper hand last time. But this time, like Lexi mentioned, again, Hybern has the advantage. The soldiers who appeared to be exhausted and tired, making our fighters feel like this was going to be a cakewalk, they were faking it. Plus, our crew has spent an entire day glamoring a previous camp and winnowing and using a sight shield, and basically they're drained of all their magic, so they're super tie-tie. Because of this, soldiers on our side, on the Prithian side, start dropping like flies and spreading out, which makes it difficult for them to reform those dang lines that we keep talking about and keep the order amongst their ranks. And to make matters even worse, a chunk of Hybern's soldiers charge into a group of Kyr's Darkbringer Legion, basically carving their army in half.
Hybern is also using Faebane in this battle with weapons and clouds of it. Luckily, it doesn't impact our crew though, thanks to Nuon's antidote. But Hybern's strategy is working. Oh no! The Night and Summer Court forces are losing this battle against Hybern. Cassian disobeys Rhys's orders as he lands in the middle of the enemy forces, pouring in to unleash himself on them. Nesta's gaze is locked on him, watching Cassian in battle for the first time, because remember, she was in a tent during the other day's battle. I wonder if she chose to watch this battle to keep an eye on him, feeling it's her duty to watch over him after his previous injury. Moore is stressing the F out because, like Feyre, she recognizes how bad the situation is for their side as she tells no one in particular, reform the damn lines! Despite showing all the signs of losing this battle, there is still no sign of the King of Hybern, or Jurian, or Tamlin, making Feyre realize that, again, this isn't Hybern's true force and it's just a distraction to make them move farther away from the real army and use up all their energy. Which, if they can't beat this throwaway army of Hyberns, how in the world are they going to win against the real army? Especially when they don't even know where it is and they keep getting tricked by Hybern, no matter how hard they try to get ahead of the king's chess moves. Step 1 is to find Hybern's full force, instead of getting picked apart and worn down by the strategically placed distractions. And they can't even do step 1 here. She feels so helpless in the situation. She's not down there fighting and no one knows how to find Hybern's real army. But that is when the idea comes to her. She knows who will have the best chance of knowing how to find Hybern's real army. Time to track down Google Suriel. During 2 other times of need, the Suriel has provided answers for our girl, so it makes absolute sense that she turns to it as the solution again to her desperate problem that needs an answer right now.
She begins to convince Moore to go down and help out their family. As Moore points out, she is wasted up here on this hilltop, and clearly Cassian and Azriel need her protection far more than Feyre and Nesta do.
Which, yes, this was Rhys's whole argument for Moore not going to find Vassa. She is needed here. Her warrior skills are vital in this fight. I can understand her guarding Feyre, for the lack of a better word, during the last battle, but right here, right now, she is way more needed on the battlefield than standing here with Feyre.
Not to mention as Feyre points out, she's not exactly defenseless here. Like, she's a high lady. She has high lady powers. And if Feyre was planning on just staying at Nesta's side, like she was not going to go off and have her great adventure with the Suriel, Feyre is absolutely in the right here. Like, more, go down and go to the army. Like, do we not remember the adder at Valaris? Like, Feyre's a badass. So Mor agrees and briefly runs into her tent for supplies, then winnows straight onto the battlefield, and just in time, because she punches her sword right through a soldier who was about to kill Azriel.
For as frustrated as we were with her and the whole thing with Az last episode, I love seeing her jump into action to save him here. Like, of course she would. She loves him platonically and he is her family. But this makes it clear that even if she sleeps with someone else to show him she's not interested, she always has his back. Literally. As Feyre turns her attention to tracking the Suriel, she doesn't have time to hope it'll just show up wherever she happens to be like the last few times. Luckily, she has access to a seer, Elaine! Her middle sister may not be able to find Hybern's army because it is cloaked by the Cauldron, which prevents Elaine from being able to track it in a similar manner. But she can help find the Suriel. Feyre uses her Daemati powers to show Elaine what the Suriel looks like, so she can use her power to search for the creature. And I love the description of Elaine's mind. She, of course, doesn't have any mental shields, and the gates to her mind are iron. How fitting with her iron engagement ring and hold to the human world as she repels being Fae. This iron gate is covered in vines of flowers, but all the blossoms are sealed and sleeping, tangled in leaves and thorns. In other words, Elaine is not vibrant and awake with life. I can't wait to see what her mental mind and shield look like in the future ACOWAR book, with her on her healing journey and embracing her new life.
This is like waiting for Elaine to bloom and flourish. Like, what beautiful symbolism here from SJM.
Yes, I love it. And then, like, of course, how Nesta's is just like a huge, like, I can't remember the exact material, but it's like a steel prison wall. Yeah, it's like a fortress wall. Yes. Once Feyre shows Elaine the terrifying but harmless Suriel, Elaine closes her eyes and is able to dig into her power to find the Suriel on a map. She may not know how her power works or even how to track the Suriel, but she still tries, and her magic innately knows what to do, with success. And the Suriel is in the middle, in the ancient forest near the Weaver of the Wood. Uh-oh. Feyre winnows to the middle in 5 leaps. She's basically jumping through the Winter Court because she was just on the northern border of the Summer Court. And even that has winded her because her magic is still very spent from all the glamoring and winnowing the day before.
Without even needing to lay a trap for the Suriel, because again, Elaine knew exactly where it was going to be, Feyre hears from behind her, quote, "Have you come to kill me or beg for my help once again, Feyre Archeron?" What an entrance from Google! We learned that the Suriel, being the good Google it is, knew that Feyre was looking for it because it saw Elaine also looking for it. It's just like living its best life, and then bam, quote, "I did not expect to see those doe eyes peering up at me from across the world." I would love to know what that looked like. That's just fascinating. However, it knows it's not only being tracked by a doe-eyed fawn, but also by Ianthe, because Hybern gave Ianthe a curse to put it in its current cloak that Suriel is wearing. And classic Ianthe gives it this torn up, shredded shit of a cloak, and not a nice, fluffy, ornate cloak like super superior Google deserves. But there is a tracking rune on this cloak so that when Feyre does find the Suriel and it's in close proximity to her, the cloak's magic will alert Ianthe and she can go get Feyre darling. But why would the Suriel come to Feyre even if it knew that Ianthe was keeping tabs on it? And we should also note that the Suriel does not outright say this to Feyre at the very beginning. It's not until much, much later. Number one, it could sense, maybe through Elaine, how desperately Feyre needed its help. Although the first thing Feyre needs to know where Hybern's army is, the Suriel cannot even see it. I just love that Feyre's like, you can see everything but that? Are you serious?
So why can't the Suriel find Hybern's real army? Well, because the king is using the Cauldron's magic to cloak it, and the Cauldron is far older and far more powerful than the Suriel. It's one of the few things that the Suriel can't see because the Suriel is part of the Prythian, I'll call it ecosystem, and the Cauldron rules over this ecosystem. Even though the Suriel can't answer Feyre's number one question, it can offer her a different solution. Nesta has the ability to track the Cauldron because she took power from the Cauldron and is directly connected to it. How is this different from Elaine, you ask? My understanding is that Elaine was gifted a specific power from the Cauldron. She's connected to it because she was made by it, but her power is not directly tied to the Cauldron like Nesta's, because Nesta took from the cauldron, took the power of death that the cauldron did not willingly want her to have, which means she has a more direct connection to it. She has raw cauldron power versus a gifted power that the cauldron separately gave. If Nesta can track the cauldron using scrying, then they will find Hybern's army, because the king is ensuring that the cauldron is with the full might of his army to unleash along with his full force. Cool, problem mostly solved. On to the next question. Why didn't the cauldron react when Feyre joined the book and spoke the spell to nullify the cauldron back in Hybern at the end of ACOWAR? Well, the answer is simple. She didn't hold on to it long enough.
Patience, Feyre!
Duh, she says. It was trying to kill her. To which the Suriel gives a bone-chilling response. Did you think that you could leash its power without a cost? Nullifying the cauldron will drain the life from her. So now we have confirmation that if only Feyre tries to do this Hybern stopping tactic, she will die. This is why during the big battle, the original plan was for her, Nesta, Elaine, and Amren to nullify it together, because only split among all of them who are made can they withstand the lethal power and all survive it. Now, this won't pan out whatsoever, and Feyre will end up being strong enough to face the cauldron alone after claiming the Ouroboros, but we are not at that complex point in our story yet.
The Suriel does bring us a little hope in terms of the monsters on our side, though, with the caveat that it can't tell if, specifically with the Bone Carver, if it's going to make a difference or not in the war.
The Suriel can't see the Bone Carver, or assumably his siblings, because he is not of this earth. The Suriel is a creature of Prythian and is all-knowing within this realm. It can't see the Cauldron because the Cauldron created this world, and the Suriel is part of this world. Similarly, the Suriel can't glean information on death gods because it is tied to knowledge within the world that the Cauldron created, and the death gods are obviously not of this world.
Feyre asks if the price the Bone Carver wants, the Ouroboros mirror, will break her. And the Suriel says, quote, "Only you can decide what breaks you, Cursebreaker. Only you." I want to highlight this because it's not very talked about, this quote, in terms of the fandom. We have the "To the Stars Who Listen" and the "Don't Let the Hard Days Win." But this is such a quietly powerful quote, too. There are times in our lives where we feel extreme hardship, and it feels almost like the world is acting against you. I know that there are moments in my life where I have felt broken down, for lack of a better term. But this line from the Suriel is such an internally powerful reminder for whenever those times do come around, because unfortunately they inevitably do. Only we get to decide what breaks us.
It encourages us to call upon our inner strength and perseverance. This life is ultimately what we make of it. Hardships will come and we will face challenges. It's a fact of life, but it's how we react to these difficulties that seek to break us.
Yes. The Suriel is not done dropping facts, though.
Feyre has been asking about another spell to use that can nullify the Cauldron's powers.
And now the Suriel tells Feyre to pass along the hint to the silver-eyed messenger that the answer lies on the second and the penultimate pages of the book. What a specific guide. And together, those messages will hold the key. Feyre, standing in for the audience, asks, "Key to what exactly?" And the Suriel says, quote, "The answer to what you need to stop hot." This is just a cruel interruption. I mean, wow, because an ash arrow just slices straight through the Suriel's throat. And this would have been a major piece of info that would have been awesome to know, Suriel. God damn it, Ianthe. But we will later learn that this is a hint actually for the unleashing spell for Amren. And her unleashing is what ends the war for once and for all. So while yes, this is the key to stopping Hybern and it is the answer, this is a just famous SJM double meaning on the page. Because yes, it's Feyre's answer to stopping Hybern, but it is also Amren's answer to finally unbinding herself from this world. And in the scene, before we go into murderer Ianthe, we also get another like calls to like, bringing our count for this book up to 2, which is actually all that there are in this book, and the total count for the series up to 6. I'm not going to lie, I thought it was way more.
Don't worry, we still have silver flames.
Facts. Facts.
Let's talk about that deadly ash arrow that tragically interrupted the Suriel, piercing its throat and spraying black blood in Feyre's face. Its blood tastes like soil, which I like to think is a nod to the Suriel being of this earth, so woven into the fabric of Prythian. But anyway, who is the culprit of this cruelty? Ianthe. Boo, you suck, Ianthe. And 2 Hybern soldiers who are actually the ones who shot the arrows, because Ianthe is no archer, but same thing. Quote, "Why does it talk to you, Feyre, when it would not even deign to speak with me?" she croons. I remember reading this for the first time and my mouth was just agape. Like, I knew Ianthe had to come back to our story in some way, but doing this to our beloved Suriel just when I thought I couldn't hate her anymore. And honestly, we can easily answer her question by what Nicole outlined a little while ago about why the Suriel does talk to Feyre. Never forget, not even Rhys can catch a Suriel, despite multiple attempts. The Suriel has let itself be caught by Feyre due to curiosity and camaraderie. If it was so willing with anyone, there would be no mystery or danger around this Google-like creature. It is drawn to those who it considers worthy of asking it questions, and Ianthe sure as shit does not fit the ticket. Feyre considers winnowing away to safety, but she can't just leave the Suriel to die like this, even with the Suriel telling her to run, willing to risk itself be taken to Hybern to give her time to escape. But that's not our girl's style.
Let's pause for a minute and just ask ourselves, what has good old Ianthe been up to in the weeks since Feyre left the Spring Court? Remember, Feyre left Ianthe in a Daemati mind noodle puddle with absolutely a busted up hand. We learn here that it took the King of Hybern himself days to unravel what Feyre did to her, and she's still unable to use her hand. Go Feyre! I mean, yes. Wow. The King of Hybern himself devoted days to unraveling something that Feyre did in a matter of minutes. That is impressive.
I want a story with like a 200-year time jump so we can see just how powerful Feyre becomes. If this is how skilled she is after just a few months of training her powers, can you imagine centuries? I can totally see her training with each of the willing High Lords too to better master their powers. Avatar style, I love it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Since then, the King of Hybern has built shields in Ianthe's mind so Feyre cannot infiltrate it again. Ianthe also tracked down the Suriel and gave it this ratted cloak and that contains the Feyre alert spell. But this is a very niche thing for Ianthe to do. So how did she know that Feyre has this relationship with the Suriel and which Suriel to find? It turns out that good old Tamlin told Ianthe that Feyre captured the Suriel, and she also adapted Feyre's successful method of capturing it, which doesn't add up. First off, how would Tamlin know which Suriel when there are, major air quotes, supposed to be many that bear that name?
Maybe he knew of this particular one that lurked in the Spring Court. Since he's High Lord of the Spring Court, he knew which creatures as powerful as Suriel were in his territory. That is all I can come up with.
that is enough of a headcanon for me to jump on board. Amazing. Now, here's the second one. Feyre, did not capture the Suriel with a cloak, the same method that Ianthe uses here, because Lucien told her to give it a dead chicken to lure it in, and Alice, aka Lisa from marketing, was like, that's stupid. All you need to do is give it a cloak and it'll come running. So the cloak method is the one that Feyre used in ACOWAR when she learned that Rhys is her mate. But there is no way that Tamlin would have known that was the method that Feyre used in the Night Court.
Yeah, I got nothing for that explanation. Like, I was reading through this and I was like, well, maybe it's actually she was improving upon the method because Ianthe also knew about the cloak method. And it's like, no, that's not how it reads. Like, we don't. Cauldron boil me.
Cauldron boil me.
Before Feyre takes off, Ianthe coos that she'll want to reconsider how she speaks to the High Priestess because she'll be her best advocate in Hybern, meaning they want to capture Feyre and bring her back to Hybern as the king has taunted Rhys and made very clear that he has used for this maid female. We can all agree Ianthe is full of shit here, right? No way is she her best advocate, maybe in a sweetly cruel way to get back at her for what she did to Ianthe's mind and hands. But of course, Feyre is way too smart to fall for such a ruse. Again, proving that Ianthe thinks that she is far superior and carries more weight than she does.
So with a catch me if you can, Feyre is off into the woods.
Feyre has to be focused, quick thinking, and at top agility right now. Sounds like she might be using AG1, because I know when I started using AG1, I noticed a real difference in my daily health. I have more energy and ability to focus. It supports my gut health, and I know I'm starting the day off right by getting the nutrients my body craves.
AG1 is packed with nutrients and vitamins that you need to keep your gut operating at its best all day long. I love how easy it is to incorporate AG1 into my daily routine. Literally, every single morning, Brett and I put a scoop of AG1 into our water or even into our smoothie. If you're on YouTube, you know my smoothie routine, and boom, we are ready to go. It makes looking after ourselves so easy.
Every scoop of AG1 includes vitamin C and zinc to support my immune health, as well as prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for gut support. I could go on and on about how AG1 is a foundational nutrient supplement that supports our body's universal needs.
If there is one product we had to recommend to elevate your health, it is AG1. And that's why we are a proud partner of theirs. If you want to take ownership over your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/FFG. That's drinkag1.com/FFG. Check it out.
Ianthe may have solid mental shields thanks to the King of Hybern, but she only has 2 Hybern guards. Sure, they may have ash arrows, but come on, you are all still underestimating our girl. She may be mostly drained of her power, though Feyre has a smart plan to get Ianthe and these Hybern grunts away from the Suriel and give it time to flee. Oh, and make them pay for all that they've done. Feyre made the mistake of not killing Ianthe a few weeks ago in the tent. She's not going to let her get away with her life this time. She knows that this spot here is only a few miles away from the Weaver's cottage, and she has been in these exact woods before with Rhys, so she knows her way around. In other words, she knows exactly where to lead an unsuspecting Ianthe and these 2 Hybern guards to their doom. I love that the ancient woods are like on Feyre's side as she swears that they are making room for her and then shifting into her enemy's way to make them stumble. These trees are literally rooting for her. Get it? I thought I was so clever there.
Oh my God.
Rooting for her. Anyway, Feyre even wonders if the Weaver is ordering the woods to open a path, as if the Weaver knows that a delicious meal is coming toward her and she wants to make it easier. Maybe that's how she lures wanderers to her cottage in this ancient wood.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Feyre pretends to be relieved that she's found a cottage with hopefully someone inside to save her from these terrible people. Help me, she cries out, making sure that Ianthe and Hybern hear her and throw off any suspicion that she is setting a trap to their deaths. Blah, ha, ha, ha. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
Don't be suspicious. Ensuring that the door to the Weaver's cottage does not shut behind her, because remember, there is no handle from the inside. Feyre waits just on the inside of the Weaver's cottage, which is absolutely pitch black. Yep, we are back in this nightmare, folks. Ianthe and the 2 guards slow their pace to a bit of a crawl to build the suspense for us readers and to give us a minute to catch up with the Weaver. Instantly, the Weaver recognizes Feyre, not by her name, but by saying thief. She recognizes a smell of the Weaver's twin on Feyre, the bone carver, which I do have some questions because she saw Feyre after seeing the bone carver, like literally the day after.
Yes.
But she didn't smell it. Whatever. It's fine.
I have some things to say about that because Feyre saw the bone carver, like you said, before the Weaver last time. So why didn't she smell him during their last encounter? She smelled her. Like, I went back through the last encounter and the Weaver very clearly did smell her and sensed that she was like all, but unlike all. So maybe she was a little overwhelmed by what Feyre was and how different she was. Maybe even smelled her twin in there, but it was like layered with so much else. I don't know. I'm just having to make stuff up to make it make sense.
The Weaver has one other thing to call Feyre, though, in addition to thief, and that is Little Wolf. I love this callback. In ACOWAR, when Feyre was going into the Weaver's cottage for the first time, she was extremely nervous and she was saying to herself, like, again, this is in her mind, not in italics, but it was in her mind. She was saying, I am a wolf. I am a wolf. So I guess it turns out that the Weaver can, read minds because she's calling her little wolf right here.
I just think that's such a cool parallel.
I do too. Not seeing Feyre in the shadows, because apparently Feyre's been taking some notes from Asriel. Ianthe and the guards cross into the threshold of the darkened cottage. Just as clever Feyre answers the Weaver's question of, who did you bring me, little wolf? With the iconic line of, dinner, and then runs out the door, slamming it shut behind her, making Ianthe and the guards unable to exit.
And the sweet sound of Ianthe and the guards' screams follow Feyre for half a mile. And just in case there is any doubt that Ianthe is dead, which, let's be honest, the rule of thumb in fantasy is you need proof, like extra proof of someone's death before making any assumptions. Anyway, when the Weaver shows up at the final battle, she will wear Ianthe's blue stone encrusted silver circlet as a symbol that Ianthe is indeed dead. Huzzah! 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 While we don't know exactly what gruesome details play out in the cottage that causes all of the screaming, we can guess that the Weaver eats Ianthe and the guards. If there's anything like what she does in the final battle, she may be devouring their life forces and turning them into mummified husks. That's what she does to the hybrid soldiers at the end battle, which to her is quite a yummy dinner. I like to imagine Ianthe was especially delicious because she is young and beautiful, and the Weaver relies on life forces to stay young and beautiful, or at least she did before her food supply became in short supply while contained in this cottage, and therefore her face grew hollowed out while the rest of her body stayed young and beautiful. May I just say, what a satisfying end to Ianthe, who deserved a death like this. Would it be nice if Feyre or Lucien or even Nesta was the one to land the killing blow? Yes, but this kind of torture because Ianthe fell into her trap is just as fantastic.
We make a pretty 90-degree pivot, though, because Feyre makes her way back to the Google, finding its bony chest heaving up and down with only a few breaths left in its long life. Feyre attempts to give it her magical healing blood, the same blood that the Suriel told her about last book that she needed to save Rhys, but the Suriel declines, saying that it is too far gone.
The Suriel refuses to let Feyre use her magic to try to heal it because it knows that she needs it for the greater good, and there is no going back from where the Suriel is now slipping to. The Suriel says all that Feyre needs to do now to help it is to stay until the end. And they exchange such a sweet moment as it tells her she was kind to it. Oh, are you already starting to cry, Nicole?
No!
Feyre has a human heart, and they first met when she was a human. She saved it from the Naga instead of saving her own skin, when no one else would have done that for the creature. The Suriel is known as this dangerous creature, sought out only for the truth that it provides. It must be quite the lonely life, where the only reason anyone dares to seek you out is for their own gain. Even though Feyre has now done this 3 times, there is a shared respect and understanding between these two after the Naga attack. The Suriel gave Feyre truthful answers when no one else was willing to give them to her, and she saved the Suriel when no one else would have done so because of that human heart of hers. But that's not all, because the Suriel's advice from ACOWAR comes full circle. It says here, quote, "I told you to stay with the High Lord, and you did." Feyre, through her tears, says, "You meant Rhys all this time." Before we move on to the second part of this key conversation, I want to highlight what the Suriel said way back when during their first meeting. Back then it said, quote, "Stay with the High Lord, human. That's all you can do. You will be safe. Do not interfere. Do not go looking for answers after today, or you will be devoured by the shadow over Prythian. He will shield you from it, so stay close to him and all will be righted." We talked about this at length in our ACOWAR episode 3, and I stick by my take on this from then, because I truly do think that the Suriel is offering a double meaning here. At first, Feyre did need to stay with the High Lord Tamlin for the series of events to fall into motion. Stay with Tamlin to then find and stay with Rhys for all to be righted. Which brings us to the next part of the Suriel's words as it dies in her arms. Quote, "Stay with him and live to see everything righted." Feyre responds, "Yes, I did, and it was." And then the Suriel says, "No, not yet. Stay with him." There is the meaning of Feyre staying with Rhys and them working together to fix the cauldron and bind the world together again. Her and Rhys are united as one, with Rhys's power flowing through her as they reforge the cauldron. But he will die. And that's what brings us to what the Suriel truly means here. When she stays with him after his death, when she doesn't give up on him, when she holds on to him and clings to those scraps and remnants of their mating bond, clawing at the void that lurked beyond. And because she stays with him and does this, doesn't give up on him despite his death, that is when they will truly live to see everything righted.
The Suriel has one last request. Please clear out my Google search history. Just kidding. It looks at Feyre, breaths beginning to rattle more, and says, quote, "Leave this world a better place than you found it." Sadly, it does not get to hear any reply from Feyre agreeing to its plea because its chest rises up, stops altogether, and the last breath escapes in a sigh.
Oh boy. It is time to say farewell to our favorite creature of Prythian, who always provided clarity, guidance, and truth in a world where masks are worn and political games are played. In a world of deception and hidden motives, the Suriel was the first in our story who stood as a beacon of honesty and answers. As a fandom, we grew to cherish the Suriel because of what it represented for Feyre. The Suriel was a lifeline in her darkest hours and offered her hope and strength when she needed it most, and that even in her despair, there was always a way forward, always an answer to guide her. Throughout our story, it has been a reoccurring foundation for her, who has continued believing in her even when she didn't believe in herself. And despite being a fearsome creature with quite the terrifying reputation and appearance, it had a heart of compassion and understanding. The Suriel became an unlikely protector for our girl, whose human heart has the ability to see the goodness in all creatures that are worth it. As Feyre notes, quote, I understood why the Suriel had come to help me again and again, not just for kindness, but because it was a dreamer. We will always remember you, Suriel the Dreamer. You were a friend, a guide, and a protector for Feyre, and therefore for us readers too. Rest in peace, our beloved Google. Feyre cries and cries like Nicole is right now for the loss of her first friend and guide here in Prythian, until a hand lays itself on her shoulder and we learn that it's Helion.
While Feyre is too lost in her own grief, like I am right now at the moment, to ask, what the fuck are you doing here in the middle, Helion? We learn at the final battle that he was coming on behalf of Rhys to make a bargain with Striga to fight with them in the war. Apparently, Rhys just never goes to the Weaver himself. Like, he always has people do his bidding.
There has been a line where he said, like, he can't do it himself. Like, I think there is some kind of beef between him and her.
Checks. Helion starts to lead Feyre away, but she has one more thing to do. Taking Helion's rich crimson cloak, a far finer alternative to the tattered one that stupid dead Ianthe gave it, Feyre lays the cloak on the Suriel's body with one last thank you. This final thank you is so much more than just thank you for saving my life today. It is thank you for being my constant aid in times of such uncertainty. Thank you for steering me towards the path I was destined for. Thank you for changing my life with Rhys. And thank you from one dreamer to another. Thank you for all you gave. Like Rhys and Feyre said, to the people who look up at the stars and wish, we will miss you, Google.
Who would have thought we'd be crying over a creature? But it's like, the Suriel is only on the page so many times. Like, it's really not, I'll say, a huge character, but it is so foundational. It is woven into our hero's journey and
a fandom.
Exactly. And as a fandom, like, we've grown to love it so much, and not in a way that, you know, like you love some of the other side characters and whatnot, but in a way that we really do see it as this guide and a protector and a dreamer too, and understanding the Suriel like our girl does. Let's turn our full attention to foreshadowing important moments in the rest of this book and the series.
Varian tells our crew that he will share something very important with Amren the next time he sees her, and that he will tell her with his body. Cassian showing Nesta some moves to kill people quickly and telling her that she'll start a riot if she wears pants. Humans of the internet, I give you silver flames. Speaking of which, when they're at the camp, Feyre describes Nesta as being a freshly forged sword waiting to draw blood. So much Valkyrie foreshadowing. I love it.
Durian says that once all his mortal queen trickery is done, who knows? Perhaps I'll join you on the battlefield. That you will, Durian, right alongside Grayson's army.
Feyre thinking briefly, italics, bold, underline briefly, about where her father is.
And how he is the only remaining connection to the human lands. Elaine was too late to save their father at the King of Hybern's hands. But I also find it interesting that even though she loses that final connection, after the war, she starts to embrace this new life and where she fits in it.
Cassian inviting Varian to come and hang out with them in Valaris, and quote, something glinted in Varian's eye. This is not only a callback to when Rhys mentioned in ACOWAR how Varian would be great buddies with Cassian and Asriel, but Varian will also be heading up to Valaris quite often in Frost and Starlight and in Silver Flames. During the second battle, Rhys roars an order at Cassian that Cassian completely ignores. This is the exact order that Rhys will be pissed at Cassian for next episode, because ignoring that order border almost cost Cassian his life.
Nesta watches the second battle closely, and while she is absolutely watching Cassian, I like to think this is a little foreshadowing for her in Silver Flames when she begins studying battles. She wants to lead a legion one day, and her observations and military tactics start here.
It is time to sip some tea with the Suriel. Oh, that's so sad, this episode.
I know.
Every episode, Lexi will sip some tea with a now dead Suriel and walk us through a world building topic to help us better understand this world and the people in it.
Today's Suriel topic is the middle. Our dear Suriel will continue living on in these Suriel Teatime segments. The middle is the neutral territory in, you guessed it, the middle of Prythian. When Prythian was divided into 7 courts, this strip of land was preserved as the only neutral area. This land separates the seasonal courts and the solar courts. So the middle's southern border is the winter court and its northern border is the dawn court. As a neutral territory, the middle does not belong to the jurisdiction of any of the courts. The courts used to meet at the sacred mountain in the middle, so no one had to risk going to a different court's territory. However, that neutral meeting location is no longer an option after Amarantha. An ancient council of High Lords made it forbidden to properly map the middle beyond vague landmarks. We may all know where the Sacred Mountain, the Ancient Woods, and the Bog of Orid are, but that's because they can be seen from land and air. So many of its secrets that you would have to discover on foot remain unknown and forbidden. The middle is full of primal magic and has its own rules and laws. This wild magic still dwells and thrives and feeds, so the courts respect it as its own entity because they do not wish to provoke its wrath by revealing its mysteries. Intruders who harm those within this area without cause might even find themselves trapped here forever. Because this area is under no High Lord's jurisdiction, it has become a dumping ground for the dangerous and unwanted fairies. But unlike the creatures sent to the prison, these fairies' crimes are only their nature, as in simply their existence is dangerous versus the prison inmates who actively and consciously do bad things. The middle keeps these dangerous by nature creatures separate from the rest of Prythian, so they aren't punished for doing what they are made to do. The law in the middle is made by who is strongest, meanest, and most cunning, which makes the weaver of the wood at the top of its food chain. Not even Amarantha dared to disturb the inhabitants of the middle during her reign. She knew better than to mess with these dangerous creatures, as much as Rhys tried to convince her otherwise, in hopes of weakening her. There are several notable areas in the middle. There is an ancient forest on the eastern side of the middle, which is where Thera has traveled to in her visits to this neutral territory. This wood is ancient and aware, with gnarled beech trees tightly woven together. It's thick with moss, and it's so eerily silent here. The air is heavy and tight and stale with no breeze, much like the rest of the middle. In this forest is where Striga is contained to her cottage, hence her nickname, the Weaver of the Wood. Reminder that she is an immortal and powerful death god who sucks life from people to stay young and beautiful. No wonder she's at the top of the food chain. She was tricked by an ancient Fae female warrior to be confined to her little plot of land, and now she relies on the life forces of lost wanderers that, as I understand, she weaves into yarn. For more information about the Weaver of the Wood and her cottage described as a junk shop, check out our ACOWAR episode 4, Suriel Teatime. Another geographical location in the middle is the Sacred Mountain. This mountain is located right in the center of the middle, and thus it is the center of all Prythian. According to the Spring Court mural that tells the history of Prythian, when the Cauldron poured its contents to create the world, this mountain was the first thing formed and all other life and territories spread out from the center point. Because this is the heart of where life was created, this mountain has always been considered sacred, and it's also why it was chosen to be the neutral land. The mountain is barren, devoid of life growing on it, yet it still somehow thrums with presence. When Amarantha crowned herself High Queen of Prythian, she violated this place and built a palace under the sacred mountain called Under the Mountain to replicate the hewn city in the Night Court. This was, of course, where Amarantha took up residence and trapped everyone in Prythian for 50 years. It's important to note that while Amarantha built her own court here, the tunnels and halls already existed and were carved a long time ago. What could that mean? We did a Suriel Teatime on Under the Mountain in ACOWAR episode 7 if you need a refresher. Amarantha's court under the mountain has now been destroyed and sealed off. She tainted the sacred mountain, and it is no longer used as a neutral place for the High Lords to convene. This sacred mountain is one of 3 sister peaks in Prythian. The other 2 are the mountain at the prison and Ramiel, all of which are bald, barren mountains at odds with those around them. It is also heavily implied that the Daglin hid a pool of magic under these sacred mountains that attracted all sorts of creatures. The Bog of Urid. This region in the middle will have its own Suriel Teatime in our Silver Flames coverage, so I'm going to keep the summary short here today. The Bog, which is another word for marshlands, is a place of darkness and death. It used to be a sacred place where warriors were laid to rest in its waters, though nowadays it is filled with such evil that no one wants to venture here, and only the worst fairies are drawn to it. The mask, one of the Dread Trove items, is also currently hidden here. It is said that the water from the Bog of Urid flows to under the mountain, and the creatures who live here have long used these waterways to travel through the middle and even into the surrounding courts. Creatures that reside in the Bog of Urid include kelpies, also known as water horses and nixies, are shapeshifters filled with hatred and hunger. They target women and children, capturing them to then drag them underwater, rape them, and then feast on their bodies. That is absolutely terrifying. Another creature here are witches, who are rumored to be banished here by various high lords, and light singers, who are ethereal creatures who kill only for sport. Again, we'll go over the Bog of Urid creatures in more detail during our Silver Flames coverage. And that, my friends, is our Suriel Teatime on the middle.
Let us wrap up this ACOWAR only section of the podcast with our Fae-vorite Moments.
Before winnowing to the Illyrian war camp and leaving Valaris for the last time before going to war, our crew hesitates as they drink it all in one last time. They're home with the sounds of the Court of Dreams. They are savoring this wonderfulness, reminding themselves what they're fighting for and what they hope to return to. And no matter what, even if they return, they'll come back different with marks on their souls. It's such a small but impactful moment as they leave this life and prepare to go to the battlefield's death and destruction.
Feyre realizing who exactly has been training her by seeing Cassian on the battlefield. I loved getting to read every morsel of Cassian at work and why he is called the Lord of Bloodshed. And then, of course, Nesta eavesdropping on all the soldiers who are just like absolutely fangirling over Cassian and his glory. And she just being like a proud mate. And like, it's just so sweet.
There's this episode in The Office when Dwight saves Jim and he like tackles Roy, and Angela is just like asking everybody like, oh, like tell me what happened. And she's trying to be super coy about it. This is exactly what I picture here.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Feyre thinking about how she wouldn't dare ask if Tamlin was around Hybern's army. And I quote, but I did dare to question Nesta about whether she felt the Cauldron's powers stirring. I did not realize on my first few reads of the series how much of being a nosy person, how much that is interwoven into Feyre's character.
Oh, yeah.
And last but not least, the Suriel calling the Cauldron, quote, bowl of death and life. Like, I know that's like very like, ooh, fantasy, but like I only picture like a little bowl, like when I put like my cereal in, a bowl of death. Like it's just such an iconic way to describe the Cauldron. We are about to begin our Maasverse Madness section for the day.
Today's Maasverse Madness includes spoilers for the Throne of Glass series. So if you have not read the Throne of Glass books, this is where we part ways. But before you go, reminder that next episode we will be covering ACOWAR chapters 61 through 68. And again, remember that episode is going to be on September 9th, not next Monday, September 2nd. We will not have an episode on September 2nd. Of course, we want to give the biggest shout out of appreciation to our newest Inner Circle Patreon members. Thank you for being part of the Inner Circle. Thank you so much for supporting us. You are absolutely incredible, and we just appreciate you so much.
Big shout out to Megan W., Sarah R., Amber H., Harshani, Nicole A.O., and Ree. Welcome to the Inner Circle.
And if you're like, wait a second, I want my name shouted out on a Fantasy Fangirls podcast episode, be sure to check out patreon.com/fantasyfangirls to join the Patreon party.
We also have a completely brand new merch store packed with, I think, with like 40 new things of merch. So go ahead, check it out. Link is in the show notes, and it's so good. I love it so much.
And of course, if you're not following us on TikTok and Instagram, what are you doing? Give us a follow at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
Last but not least, please do not forget to rate and review the podcast. It takes 2 seconds, and it's one of the best things you can do, not only for the show, but for any show that you listen to. I cannot overstate how massively important those ratings and reviews are. So thank you to everyone who has done it already.
We are now going to enter our Maasverse Madness segment of the episode, where we call out series crossover references and discuss theories. Today, we are discussing concepts from only the Throne of Glass series, so please only continue listening if you have read Throne of Glass.
Let us start with why. Oh, why did Nesta ask more about witches? Thus continues my Moore is absolutely a Kraken witch crack theory, because Moore seems to know quite a lot about witch magic. Also, how she's describing it with it being a power beyond their natural reserve, and how it's, you know, are like spells and archaic tools that are used to harness the power and like made more than the Cauldron allotted. Like, this is what I would imagine the third of the Night Court. Those are the kind of powers I would imagine that person to have. Also, because Moore, when entering the scene, is all like, ha ha ha, jokey. And then Nesta asks her, what's the difference between a fae and a witch? And quote, Moore answered with sudden seriousness. Why are you so suddenly serious, Moore? Is it because someone is asking you about your history? However, I will say that there are some very convincing arguments about Nesta being an Iron Teeth witch, or at least having some Iron Teeth blood in her. But all of those will have to wait until Silver Flames. I apologize for being such a tease. Or hell, maybe Nesta has some Iron Teeth and Moore is a Kraken witch. I am like so convinced. It is actually insane. Because whenever a witch is brought up on the page, at least thus far, it's always been around Moore, and Moore has always had some kind of reaction. Like, I don't think that's an accident. And it is time for one of my favorite crack theories. Lexi, are you ready?
I am ready.
That crack theory is that the Suriel is actually Kaltain Rompier from Throne of Glass. I have been seeing this all over the effing interwebs, and I'm going to pull most of this info from actually a video from That Girl Reads on TikTok, video in the show notes, all that good stuff. But let's start off with the cloak connection, which is the big thing that set off this theory here. When Kaltain is about to sacrifice herself in Morath, she gives Elide a scrap of the cloak that Selena gave to her back when they were prisoners in the Glass Castle. That cloak meant so much to Kaltain because of that moment with Selena. And honestly, it was really the first time anyone showed Kaltain any act of kindness. What does the Suriel cherish above all? Freaking cloaks and sometimes chicken. But there's more. Selena/Aelin is also known for frequently saying, quote, a better world. And the Suriel's dying words are, leave the world a better place than you found it. So this could be Kaltain being touched by Selena's kindness and wanting to pass it on to the next person. That Girl Reads also connects that Kaltain is the castle gossip and loved the tea. And what is the Suriel known for? The tea. I love that. Like, she's like, this is such a silly connection. And honestly, I'm so here for it. I love it. Now, there is also a theory that whenever a huge act of magic occurs, a portal rips in the multiverse, basically. So when Kaltain destroyed Morath with Shadowfire, she basically ripped open a portal into Prythian and over time became the Suriel. This is my favorite, though. This is what sealed the deal of this crack theory for me. When Kaltain dies, quote, as she brought it all crashing and crumbling around them, Kaltain smiled and at last burned herself to ash on a phantom wind. When the Suriel dies, Feyre thinks, and I quote, I could have sworn that pile of ashes was stirred by a phantom wind. Ooh! Also, when Feyre asks for the Suriel's name, it does not give it to her, saying that it's not important now. This is just so much sus SJM shit right here. Last but not least, as the Suriel is dying, from Feyre, quote, real pain, as mortal as any creature. Mortal? Kaltain? Now, I do need to throw a huge wrench into this theory that when the Suriel dies, black blood is what sprays. So could this be a result as Kaltain, had the collar on her? She was Shadowfire. She became part Volg over time, basically. However, as Kaltain is dying in Queen of Shadows, she does slice herself open a little bit and her blood is red. So That's a little bit of a hole in this theory. I don't know. The Phantom Wind really sealed the deal for me.
All right, friends. Whew. That was a doozy of an episode.
We are never doing 11 chapters ever again.
Oh, don't say that, because we still got Silver Flames left and we're trying to squeeze it into to 11 episodes too. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. As always, one more time, we will not be releasing our episode 9 next Monday. We are skipping next week and it will be released on September 9th.
Thank you, as always, to our executive producer, Hayden, aka our sanity manager. We love you. And we'll actually see you tomorrow at the time of us recording this. We're so excited.
So excited. Yes, indeed.
And please do not forget, last but not least, share this episode with your fellow ACOWAR friends. If you were also affected by the Suriel and you have a friend who also cried when they read this part of Wings and Ruin, this is the episode for them. We can all cry together at Lexi's eulogy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Because you see, heat makes people's temperatures rise. And I love how since the Illyrians are already known to have tempers, their territory isn't.
Tempers, not temperatures. Because I was listening and I was like, well, no shit.
That's what I even went back and I was like, wait, I need to redo that again.
Did I just say 45 minus 20 is 5?
I don't know where you were going with any of that.
Even though it cannot tell if the bone carver can or cannot make a difference, technically, in the war efforts. What did I just say?
Was that funny?
You said, who knows?